This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
Good morning. Where to begin? I think Nick Ferrari this morning, struggling to contain his mirth at the Rwanda scheme, actually sets the tone for the only way to approach it now. If you don't laugh, you'll cry. I can't begin to imagine what it would be like to contemplate this sort of policy if you were a fan of Boris Johnson, who, of course, was Prime Minister when it was first introduced, or an admirer of Priti Patel, who was the Home Secretary who first sought to steer it to fruition, or indeed a cheerleader for Suella Braverman, who was both the second and third Home Secretary who sought to deliver the Rwanda plan, whatever it was. And everywhere you turn, it gets worse. I can't remember a policy like this. Let me run through some of your suggestions. I think we're going to do a phone-in on is this the worst policy of your lifetime? 0345 6060 973. And if not, what is? You can't have Brexit. My inbox, God, there's a first. James O'Brexit saying you're not allowed to talk about Brexit. Brexit's not a policy in the same sense that this is. The government that brought Brexit about was David Cameron's, and he didn't want it. Obviously, having presided over such epic stupidity in political life would, in a normal country, exclude you from high office for the rest of your days. But in Brexit Britain, he gets brought back as Foreign Secretary by a desperate Prime Minister, i.e. Rishi Sunak. So you can't have Brexit. Yes, it cost a fortune. Yes, there are absolutely no benefits at all. I'm reading your text now. That's from Ali. But it doesn't count because it's not like the government announced it. It was a referendum result that went against what the government of the time wanted. So I can't, and James says, what about leaving Europe, James? That's touched every side of everything. Yes, you're right, but it's not the same. You can't, it's not a policy. So I'd give you the poll tax, which younger listeners would probably struggle to remember. But the poll tax at least had an ideological foundation. This is a similar conversation to the one that Keir Starmer prompted about Margaret Thatcher the other day. You might not like what the policy did or what the Prime Minister did, but you cannot dispute the significance of their impact upon British politics. And so with the poll tax, you might not like the poll tax, which was a sort of attempt to introduce a flat rate rather than means testing to property tax, what became the council tax, replacing rates. It had an ideological foundation, to my mind, a fairly ugly ideological foundation, but you could see clearly what the intent of it was. You could perhaps put Kwasi Kwarteng and Liz Truss's mini budget in the mix. But again, you could see what the ideological foundation to that was. And they genuinely thought it would work. The weirdest thing about the Rwanda policy is that nobody ever seems to have thought it would work. We failed a bit yesterday. I asked you yesterday how they had ended up in this mess. And for the first time in a long time, and you won't have known this, and I probably shouldn't tell you, because you wouldn't have been able to tell. But yesterday, for the first time in ages, we were not inundated with calls in the first hour. We had plenty. We had more than the average show. But we were not other shows, not this average show, more than the average radio phone-in show. We had way more than that. But we had a little bit less than what we're used to. It didn't quite land. I didn't do my job well. Sometimes, on other radio stations, if the phones don't ring, they start phoning people who've texted in and asking them to come on, because they're so desperate to get the program moving along. So if you do send a text to another radio station, be aware that they might ring you up 5 minutes later and ask you to come on because they're so desperate for calls. Certainly never going to be knocking at that door on this program. But whenever things are a bit slow, and a new producer or an inexperienced or a temporary producer might say, I think we need to do this, or I always say, no, I've not done my job right. I've not done my job well. I've failed this morning. My job is to be interesting enough to make you interested enough to ring in and be interesting. And yesterday we succeeded in terms of that hour, but we were lower than our usual marks. And I think if I were to excuse myself of responsibility for that, I think it's because it's actually a very hard question to answer. How have they ended up in such a mess? Once you've said because they were trying to appease the mad wing of their own mad party, there's not really that many other places to go. And the specifics of yesterday's mess, as opposed to today's mess, which is a slightly different flavoured mess from yesterday's mess, the specifics of yesterday's mess were caused partly by not expecting Rwanda to be more committed to international law than the UK government is. The UK government did not expect Rwanda to be more committed to and cognizant of international law than the UK government is prepared to be and expect. So that would be the specifics of yesterday's mess. But the broader mess, because as soon as you say they're trying to appease the mad wing of their own mad party, you say, yes, but how could they not have realised? Rishi Sunak is supposed to be quite bright. How could they not have realised that this wouldn't work? How have they ended up posting yesterday a frankly extraordinary tweet from the Prime Minister's own account? And I say those words with an air of depression, actually, to be honest with you, because we live here, and however clear-eyed you might be about how awful this government is, it's still the only government we've got for the time being. I don't know if you saw this. They put up is it a meme? It's not a meme, is it? A sort of poster, but on social media. How illegal migrants try and stay, it said. Claiming asylum, blocked. Abuse of modern slavery rules, blocked. And they've sort of mocked up a little, looks like a rubber stamp, blocked. Claims that Rwanda isn't safe, blocked. But that was a Supreme Court ruling. So they're not even being honest when they're being propagandist. Well, I suppose most propagandists aren't honest. So would you celebrate Supreme Court ruling blocked by politicians? I mean, it's kind of like the opposite of democracy. A baby step towards fascism. The risk of being sent on to another country. Blocked. I don't really even understand what that means. And then spurious human rights claims. Blocked. The problem with this, if you haven't seen it, I'm holding it up, actually, for the benefit of people watching this later on YouTube. We don't go out live on YouTube. We go out later in the day on YouTube. You can... I don't think I've told the producer this. When we play out stuff like PMQs... the camera is often still on me. Or if we play a clip and it caught me on Wednesday, it looked as if I was swearing in the studio. I mean, there's no earthly way I was. No, it wasn't PMQs, because we'd take that live, wouldn't we? We'd take the feed of PMQs. They'd be watching PMQs on YouTube. But it was Boris Johnson's testimony. So we're taking it. So the audio was playing, but on the YouTube recording, the camera was still on me. And when Johnson used a phrase like mandarinata or something like that to describe, invented a word to describe civil servants, it looked as if I was effing and jeffing away in the studio. But I can, my lords, ladies and gentlemen, I can categorically assure you that I would never, ever F or Jeff in this hallowed space that is an LBC studio. But anyway, next time we do that, will you remind me not to F or Jeff on the camera when I think it's not on me. I think it's not on me. But it's on me now, so I'm showing you this thing, and it's pathetic. And the thing it doesn't point out, of course, is that they've blocked every attempt to claim asylum, whether it's real or not. They've blocked appeals to modern slavery rules, whether they're real or not. They have blocked claims that Rwanda isn't safe, but the claims come from it's not even a claim, it's a verdict. It's a judgment from the Supreme Court. It's extraordinarily awful, this policy. And I think it might be the most awful policy we've ever seen. So I have two questions for you today. One is an attempt to restore a little bit of the credibility that we lost yesterday by not getting a brilliant answer to this question, which is, and it's not the specifics of today's mess. Today's mess is the money. I don't know if you're aware of this, but it was reported overnight that rather than the £140 million that it was believed to cost, the correct figure is now £300 million. The Home Office admitted last night that another £100 million has already been handed over. So they got 140 million quid up front, right? 140 million quid up front. They've got another 100 million quid since then. And next year they get, wait for it, £50 million. 50 million of your earth pounds. So a grand total of 290 million quid already earmarked or spent, massive majority of it already spent, in return for a Suella Braverman photo opportunity when she did that famous impression of the Wicked Witch of the West from The Wizard of Oz. You remember when she was throwing her head back like Cruella de Vil and cackling at the moon. That is it. That's what we've cost. That photo opportunity of Suella Braverman standing in Rwanda with a couple of nonplussed locals. That cost us £290 million. Suella Braverman, sacked twice as Home Secretary, arguably the most disgraced politician of her generation, and that generation includes Boris Johnson, who's only managed to get chucked out once from the Prime Minister's job. I grant you, he'd been fired from various other positions for various reasons, including making up quotes from his own godfather when he was on the Times newspaper. But in terms of the cabinet, to get sacked twice in disgrace, an extraordinary achievement that never would have happened before, because for someone sacked in the circumstances that she was sacked the first time, there would normally have been no way back. So £290 million. I sound like an auctioneer, don't I? Well, imagine if it was an auction. So here it is. It's up on the wall behind me. Here is a photograph of Suella Braverman at a facility in Rwanda where she claims refugees from this country who have been deported will be housed. Journalists on the ground in Rwanda have found some evidence that actually it's some sort of holiday village, and there's no proof yet that it has actually been allocated to refugee housing. But let's go with let's print the legend. What am I bid? How much would you pay for this photo opportunity for a soon-to-be disgraced British Home Secretary cackling maniacally in Rwanda while promising to be really, really horrible to refugees? Am I bid £10? What? Good Lord, the British government at the back of the room has just come straight in at 290 million quid for a photo opportunity of Suella Braverman. That's 1% of Rwanda's GDP. Did you know that? 1% of Rwanda's GDP, that. I mean, that is an astonishing bit of business for Paul Kagme's administration. Do you remember Theo Usherwood, our former political editor, who is very grateful for all your good wishes, which you often ask me to pass on to him? He yesterday did some sums. He did some sums on what this money might have spent, other things that this money might have been spent on. You know, people love doing that. And I'll share it with you shortly. The number of teachers, the number of nurses, the number of care workers. 300 million quid. And of course, the punchline is that even if it works, you're looking at, I think, about 200 people, possibly. My friend upstairs, Connor, who's very clever and follows things more closely than I do, he said 500. If you really dig into the weeds of it, it could be as many as 500 people a year, out of a total so far this year of about 27,800. So you can do the sums on that one. Even if it works brilliantly, you'd be looking at not far shy of £1 million per person sent to Rwanda. £1 million per person sent to Rwanda. That's what it's cost us so far. But don't forget, we did get the photo opportunity of Suella Braverman doing her Wicked Witch of the West impression. So, question number one is this actually the worst self-inflicted injury you can remember a British government ever doing? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. Genuine question. I think it is. But you know when they ask you what the best 100 albums of all time are, and the Spice Girls come second, because we're right in the middle of the Spice Girls' heyday. You have, is there a word for that? There's a sort of excessive contemporaneity or something, contemporaneity. Do you know what I mean? The best 100 albums of all time would not include the Spice Girls. No offence to the ladies, but I don't think even they would argue that they deserve pride of place in the best 100 albums of all time. So sometimes when you ask someone in, for example, July of 2002, what the best 100 albums of all time are, then an album doing very, very well in July 2002, which is now completely forgotten, would feature much more highly than it should do. You're looking at Bowie, Zeppelin, Beatles, aren't you? You know, Elton John, Billy Joel. I mean, the classics, the absolute Fleetwood Mac. I mean, the absolute... Don't text me about the best 100 albums of all time. Not that desperate. But then you get some votes that wouldn't make a normal list. So am I suffering from Spice Girls-itis this morning? Am I suffering from a touch of the Spice Girls-itis? Is this the worst self-inflicted injury you can remember any British government ever inflicting on itself? I think it is. And I think there's a bunch of reasons for it, up to and including that final one, which is even if it worked, it would still be rubbish. So you start off chronicling how rubbish it is because it's not working and is unlikely to work. But the sort of pièce de résistance, the coup de grâce, the random other French phrase designed to describe a dénouement. There you go. The pièce de résistance, the coup de grâce, the dénouement even if it worked brilliantly, even if it did exactly what it says on the tin, it would still be rubbish. That's what's so brilliant about it. It would be absolutely rubbish. And the minute a Rwandan refugee, someone who's fleeing Rwanda because they've been persecuted for their politics, which of course has happened in very recent memory. I was with a man imprisoned in Rwanda for his political beliefs just last month. As soon as that happens, one of them comes here, and I'm very much of the political position that would want to make him or her very welcome. Imagine what all of the sort of thigh-slapping jingoists are going to do when that happens. So what would an even worse political move, it's more than a policy, isn't it? It's more than a policy, less than a Brexit. What would an even worse self-inflicted political injury look like? And the side order, the second question this hour, is a genuine, sophisticated and detailed account of how Suez is a good play, but you'd need to explain yourself on that one, Tony. A detailed account of how Rishi Sunak, specifically Rishi Sunak, has ended up in such an almighty mess. It's called, there is a word for it. There is a phrase for it. Did you know that? It's not, you'll be very surprised to hear, it's not called excessive contemporaneity. No, I know. I was so pithy and it trips off the tongue so easily. There is a phrase for the fact that a Spice Girl album in the Spice Girls' heyday would end up in the top 100 albums of all time. And I may be suffering from this condition when I say to you, I think this is the worst policy of our lifetime. And I will tell you what the condition is called after this.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 22 minutes after 10 and, fans of words, it's called recency bias. I misread it first. I thought it said regency bias, which I think is a condition that describes people who spend all their lives talking about George III. It's recency bias. Recency bias. So am I suffering from recency bias when I say I can't remember a self-inflicted harm inflicted on itself by a government, not a country, on the same scale as the Rwanda policy? Lionel Barber, former editor of the Financial Times and a great friend of the programme, he's gone for Brexit. But that's a self-inflicted injury of all time. He writes, listening to Mr. James O'Brien in coruscating form on the government's ultra-dumb waste of money Rwanda policy, but worst self-inflicted injury of all time is surely Brexit. They had to do Brexit after the referendum. They didn't have to do this. So I think it is in personally in a different class of self-inflicted catastrophe. What do you think? Alan's in Blackpool. What do you reckon, Alan?
Good morning, James.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm going to perhaps be boring, as in agree with you. Can I just say about Brexit?
Yes,
the thing
briefly.
Is, only briefly, I promise. We look back, and let's be honest, David Cameron would have never have had that referendum if he thought for one moment he was going to lose it. But anyway, that's only my opinion. But moving on,
I don't think it's a particularly controversial opinion. I mean, he might have contemplated the possibility of losing, but David Cameron's entire career is typified by a largely baseless belief in his own abilities, and he certainly would have thought he'd be able to deliver the desired result on Brexit. But why do you think, if you are in agreement with me, that this Rwanda scheme is the worst that you've seen in your life? And I have to start, do you know, Alan, we're going to break one of the golden rules of radio phone-ins here, where the older you are, the more interesting your contribution becomes. So may I ask how old you are?
Yeah, I'm 64.
And I still love you.
Oh, thank you. I got interested in politics all those years ago, back in 1974, when, we had the miners' strike.
Heath and Callaghan were swapping Downing Street like revolving doors.
We got in a right old mess then, but it was almost, well, perhaps it wasn't at the time, but it was almost, now look back and it was a good laugh. You had Jim Callaghan, when everyone was on strike, no trains, you couldn't bury your dead. He came back from a holiday that he'd had, and at the airport he was asked about it, and he said, crisis? What crisis?
Sunny Jim.
It was hilarious.
Oh, they called him Sunny Jim Callaghan, didn't they? I think, as a consequence.
Right, yeah.
So why is this one the worst you've ever seen?
Right, this one. I mean, I'm not some sort of political expert, but over the years, and I've known it for several years, Rwanda, a terrible country. And when I say terrible, a country with no thought or belief in human rights. A country that has been responsible for genocide.
Yeah, not the current government, but I grant you, it has a very bloody, very recent history. So it's an odd country to pick on as the place to which we'd send anyone, really.
Well, that's right. And getting on to Richie Sunak, I can't get my head around the man. He's how can I put it? He's just in a world of his own.
He does seem to be, doesn't he?
But I want to say worries me. What gets me is he seems to really believe what he's saying. He gets up and spouts all this stuff, and he actually believes it. I think there was an old expression: if you say something enough, you'll believe it. I don't know if you remember that old expression.
Well, I don't. I'll tell you what, Alan. If you say it enough, I will. I mean, it's there. 64 years old. Can we go older than that? Worst policy of your entire life. Worst self-inflicted political injury of your entire lifetime. Pradeep suggested that Suez and Chamberlain's appeasement policy were worse. Well, Chamberlain's appeasement policy was quite short-lived. It was obviously his unintended resignation letter, and in terms of, it's up there, isn't it? But I don't know that it's a self-inflicted injury to believe somebody when they tell you that they're not going to do something that they subsequently do. You can't see into the future. The Rwanda stuff, everything that has happened was not just predictable, but written in stone. So it's a little bit different. Suez was an epic misjudgment of how the world would respond to post-imperial Britain's muscle flexing. So again, more misjudgment. So I can understand and explain a misjudgment in both cases. I can explain Chamberlain on appeasement. I can explain Eden on Suez. You can see how it happened. I think what we discovered yesterday, it's very hard to fully understand how the hell Sunak could have got himself into such a mess. Robin is in Huddersfield from Lancashire to Yorkshire. Robin, what would you like to say?
Oh, hello. Yeah, well, I'm 81.
Fantastic. Carry on.
And I seem to remember, well, I do remember it really, but I was only a little kid at the time, but there was a thing called the ground nut scheme.
The ground nut scheme?
Yeah, which is like peanuts.
Yes.
And I think the government had the idea that it would save our food problems. And so we invested millions and millions and millions of pounds in this ground nut scheme, and it was an absolute cock-up.
Yes, thank you for moderating your language there at the last. Well, good Lord, it cost the equivalent of one. Guess how much it cost the equivalent of, Robin?
I don't know.
£1 billion.
Yeah, I know it was a hell of a scandal.
It was Clement Attlee, and the idea was to produce urgently needed oil seeds on a projected 3 million acre plot in Tanganyika, which is now part of Tanzania, and it would increase margarine supplies in Britain and also develop a neglected backwater of the British Empire, despite an enormous effort. And I have never heard of the groundnut scheme in my life.
Well, I remember it. Well,
you would do. You're 81.
But I didn't have time to do any research on it before I rang you up, and I didn't realise I'd get through to you. I thought I might just. Well, we are
normally. The moment you say I'm 81, it can sometimes put you to the back of the queue, Robin, because radio phone-ins are a brutal place. But not today. Today you come straight to the front of the queue. It was 1946. It was introduced. It cost the equivalent of £1 billion, and it was described in 1953 as the worst fiasco in recent British colonial history. And God knows there was a lot of competition.
So does that feature in some importance?
How much damage did it do to Clement Attlee? Can you remember?
Oh, it did a hell of a lot of damage. Then, of course, we got Churchill back in, didn't we?
But was Attlee's failure in the 1950 election...
I'm a great fan of Attlee.
Oh, I'm a great fan of Attlee, but do we know how big a role the groundnut... It sounds a bit like Groundhog Day. The groundnut scheme played in Attlee's defeat against Churchill in the 1950 election.
Well, yeah, I think he went out in 1950 or 51, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah. But I don't know. So it's on the blooming list.
Groundnut. It was obviously something that some so-called experts thought was a good idea.
1946 groundnut scheme. John Strachey was the food minister who overlooked the warnings about environment and rainfall. So they were constantly told it rains too much, the environment's unsuitable, communications are inadequate, you're moving too quickly, and all of the predictions of it being awful came true, which puts it very much on the same page as Rishi Sunak's Rwanda scheme. So Clement Attlee's groundnut scheme and Rishi Sunak's Rwanda scheme currently competing for the top spot on the worst self-inflicted policy injury that any government has ever undertaken. What I need to know is how big a role the Tanganyika groundnut scheme played in Clement Attlee's defeat against Churchill in, I think it was 51 actually. I think Robin has correctly corrected me. 10:31 is the time. Thomas Watts has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 10:34. Christine writes, as a retired geography teacher, I remember teaching O-level kids all about the groundnut scheme. You're too young, James. I imagine the syllabus constantly changed and then the GCSE came in. Well, yeah, I mean, it would be in history, though, wouldn't it? 1947, 46 it was conceived, 47 it was introduced, and then in 1951, January 1951, it was completely abandoned. An epic failure. The equivalent, someone writing it for History Today magazine in 2001 described it as the post-war Britain's equivalent of the Millennium Dome. We forgot about that as well. But surely the Rwanda scheme is worse than the Millennium Dome and worse than the Tanganyika groundnut scheme, about which hardly any of us had ever heard until this. That's why I love this job. It's good old Robin in Huddersfield, bringing us up to speed with the breaking news on the Tanganyika groundnut scheme. But is the Rishi Sunak Rwanda scheme even worse? And is it even fair to call it the Rishi Sunak Rwanda scheme when, as with almost all of the truly terrible things that have happened to this country since 2016, Boris Johnson's sticky fingerprints are all over it? Caleb is in Eindhoven in the Netherlands. Caleb, what would you like to say?
I mean, I'm just in a point where I just don't understand how we've got ourselves into this position, really. As in, he's inherited this policy,
yes,
and then he's had so many opportunities down the line to get rid of it,
yes,
when he hasn't.
Correct.
He's dug himself deeper and deeper.
He has.
And now when he's asked questions about it in his own press conference, his only answer is, look at Labour, they don't know what to do about it.
What is Labour's plan to clear up the mess that we've spent nearly 14 years making?
Look, I think Labour have got a better idea than what the Conservatives do. I don't think they've been particularly clear on policy, but
they don't have to be. They're not in power.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to say
completely agree.
They're not in power. It's not a general election yet. Why would they sort of say everything now so that the Conservatives can come up with concrete reasons why not to do it, or in fact copy them?
It's absolutely extraordinary. Here's Labour's plan. This will work. Oh, we'll have that. Caleb,
exactly.
I don't want to offend you, but you don't sound 81.
I'm not 81, so I haven't seen many worse policies. But I'm just like, I think this is the worst in my lifetime.
How old are you? That's relevant, isn't
it?
I'm
18 years old.
18 years old. So you can't even remember the Millennium Dome.
I can't.
Good
but,
Lord.
I mean, it's just I can't understand. It's just sort of embarrassing to be from the UK and to see this happening with your government and people sort of laughing at us. And by the way, the Netherlands aren't much better with who they've just voted in as their Prime Minister. But still, we're the country with worse policies. We're the country who's sort of just like, even if this works, it's, as you've said, it's a minute amount of this, but the Conservatives, if it works at all, they'll say it's a big win, we finally ship people off to Rwanda.
200 people out of 27,800, yes!
It's just ridiculous. And the fact that they now...
For 300 million quid.
They're going to take credit for it. It costs so much money. And the fact is, it's embarrassing.
So when your Dutch friends come up to you and say, what is happening? I nearly did a Steve McLaren there and attempted a Dutch accent. You don't even know who Steve McLaren is, do you, Caleb?
I don't.
No. It's worth looking up. So he's a football manager that went to Holland to manage. It may even have been Eindhoven that he was managing, actually. And he did this extraordinary thing, Caleb, in interviews where when he was speaking to Dutch journalists in English, he started speaking English in a Dutch accent. And it is worth looking up on YouTube. It's truly hilarious because...
I'll look it up.
Well, I must have thought that he might make his English more comprehensible to a Dutch person if he spoke English with a Dutch accent. So you think I'm exaggerating. I promise you're going to have a little giggle. You're going to have a proper giggle. But when a Dutch friend comes up to you and asks you, what is this Rwanda policy all about? And resisting the urge to do a Steve McLaren, what do you say? How do you respond?
There's just no way of So firstly, the fact that Labour now are in the position where they're not even going after the completely immoral factors about it.
No, that's true.
The fact that you're sending people to a country that is actively not safe for refugees or even just political opponents.
No, excusez-moi. They've mocked up a rubber stamp with the word blocked on it, and they have stuck that rubber stamp on the claim that Rwanda is not safe. Ergo, Rwanda automatically becomes safe,
If they pass a law that says it's safe, it's safe. That's
correct. If they pass a law that says a cat's a dog, a cat's a dog. And don't you forget it.
And even if it is safe, which it isn't, it's not effective. It doesn't help anyone, and it costs so much money. So there's not a single metric, which is why when they're interviewed when they're in press conferences, people are asking about them. No one has a response except for the fact that we've put in changes that will help to make it better, and that the law, we're addressing all the things that the law is going against. I mean, they're not, are they?
No, they're not.
Even Rwanda was saying it's the exact same as it's been before. The fact is no one's buying it anymore.
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, it's hard, certainly among my audience, to find anybody who's cheering for it. But I don't know whether whether there is somebody somewhere, some backbenchers either like it or don't think it's gone far enough.
I think the people that can see this most people that see this as a problem are around other people that are sane enough to see it as a problem. That's like with me with Brexit.
Yes.
I don't think I talked to a single person who said, oh, yes, the EU's rubbish, I'm going to leave it, because they were all educated enough about what it was.
Yes.
And then and then obviously you see it happens and you're shocked.
Yes.
And then the most Googled thing the day after Brexit was, what is the European Union in the UK?
Yes, this is very true.
That just shows the situation we're living in. People are stupid, and people buy that. No offence to people.
Well,
but,
it's a bit late now. You just called them stupid. You can't. I mean, that's a bit like having a rubber stamp saying no offence. You've just called them stupid. Just sticking a rubber stamp on it saying no offence doesn't mean there was no offence.
Okay, if you still think this Rwanda policy is a good one, I'm going to say you are stupid.
There you go. You heard it here first. Caleb, don't bother looking it up on YouTube. I'm going to dig it out. I'm going to dig out Steve McLaren speaking English in a Dutch accent to make himself more comprehensible to a Dutch journalist, because it's such a beautiful bit of popular culture history. And it wasn't Eindhoven, it was FC Twente. How do you pronounce it, Caleb?
Twente, I think.
Twente, FC Twente that he was managing. 10:41 is the time. David is in Hull, an 18-year-old dropping truth bombs all over the studio. David, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James.
Hello.
Well, I'd like to hear a wee bit more positivity regarding the illegal immigration.
Go on then. The stage is yours.
Thank you. Well, I don't actually agree with the Rwanda policy, but there is no alternative, James. I'm married to a lady from Asia. She paid to come here. She's nursing. I've no problem with migration. I think the clue is in the word illegal.
No, the clue is in the word asylum or safe route. So if they don't come by the boats, how do they come here?
No, James. No, a lot of those economic migrants come in by the boat.
But how do you find out whether they are bona fide asylum seekers or not?
Well, they have to go through obviously be looked at. I mean, at the end of the day...
And at the end of that process, of course, they cease to be either legal or illegal. They are either asylum...
At the end of the day, if it's illegal, it's illegal.
So what's the legal way?
The legal way is to get a visa.
No, if you're a refugee...
You can go to a British embassy.
If you're No, you can't.
Well, yes, you can.
No, I promise you can't. If you've come out of Afghanistan or Syria, or if you're fleeing from...
We have embassies in Italy. We have embassies in Holland.
You can't apply for asylum in... I mean, we can sit here all day, David.
Yes.
And remember, you're here to provide positivity. We can sit here all day and you can say that all of these people crossing the channel in boats could instead have gone to the embassy in Paris and applied for asylum. And it never becomes true, however many times you say it.
Well, we have to do something about it, James. And at the end of the day...
so you open up safe routes?
Yes. So safe routes, what, for illegal immigrants?
No, safe routes to establish whether an application is credible or not. Because when we do that, it turns out about 70 to 80% of the people apply are genuine asylum seekers.
What, from Bangladesh, Pakistan? They're not in any danger.
But how do you know? You can get killed in some countries for being gay.
You can be killed here.
Well,
we have terrible crime here.
Okay.
In fact, there was a lad that died here.
Yes, if it was against the law to be gay, David, you're now talking about a lad that got stabbed, and you're here to provide positivity. So I'll give you another chance. I'll give you another chance to provide some positivity that you wanted.
Well, at the end of the day, I don't see that this government has another alternative from the Rwanda policy. And I think earlier on you mentioned...
But it doesn't work.
It's got a different government now. How do you know it doesn't work?
How many people have we sent to Rwanda?
We haven't sent any yet.
Well, that's how I know it doesn't work.
But if we get the policy through and we block set, and at the end of the day, we have lawyers here.
Yes, and they've said it's illegal.
Who pays for these lawyers? The taxpayers. They're making good hay out
The
of
government
it.
has spent 300 million. The government has spent 300 million pounds of your
Not
money
to
on
date,
lawyers.
It hasn't. Not yet. I believe it's spent 140, and I believe there's another 100 million.
3 million pounds on lawyers fighting the law. And you know what happens when you fought the law, David?
No, the
law
bottom
won.
line is we need obviously amendments in law so it can deal with that situation. There's no problem with legal migration.
No, you keep coming back to that,
migration.
and I'm still waiting for the positivity.
Well, the other thing is you're going about Brexit, and I feel quite offended.
No, we're not talking
that was
about
a
Brexit
democratic
today.
vote.
Yes.
And yes, but that came about because the people of Britain wanted sovereignty. They wanted to choose.
No, it didn't. It came about because people of Britain wanted to take back control, and they wanted to reduce immigration, and they wanted to improve the cost of living. So how's that working out for you, David, in Hull?
Well,
let's go through it one by one.
What's the
current immigration figure?
The immigration figure this year
is
about 760,000.
And what was it before Brexit?
Oh, I'll guarantee it was lower than that. Yes,
correct. So that didn't work. How's the cost of living working out for you?
You can't tie that to Brexit.
Of course you can. That's what you voted for. No. And now you're offended that people think you're stupid.
No.
So what's the biggest benefit you got?
Pakistan is a country who's in... I think it's going for its 23rd bailout, if I'm not mistaken.
Sorry, what are you talking about now? Pakistan?
That's correct. We have illegal migrants coming from Pakistan.
But how you wanted to talk about Brexit?
No. Brexit
Yes.
No, it was mentioned by your other callers.
Yes, it was mentioned by you a minute ago. You said you keep going on about Brexit, and you were going to say something interesting. What was it?
The interesting thing about Brexit, that was a democratic vote.
Yes, for?
We really wanted... Well, there was a lot of Labour voters.
So what's the biggest win for you? What's been the biggest improvement to your life since you voted for Brexit? As a consequence of Brexit?
I didn't vote for Brexit.
Rubbish.
Sorry?
Rubbish.
James,
David.
You shouldn't... No, James, listen.
No, I am listening, David.
For Brexit.
Well, I think you did.
I didn't vote.
You didn't vote at all?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
It's a long story, James, which I couldn't really explain. I had to leave. Me and my family had to leave Scotland. We were witnessing an HMRC case. We came down to Hull here. We've gone through the system. It's been an absolute nightmare.
What's the worst policy of your life that a government has introduced?
The worst policy of my life that the government introduced. I think there's been many. I haven't seen many positive. To be perfectly honest,
you were supposed to be providing positivity.
I wrote to Gordon Brown in 2008.
I
mentioned to him we needed a national house building program.
Okay. I don't want to sound... You've put me in a very uncomfortable position, David. It's 10:47. I've got to go to a break. What? Can you remember why you rang in?
Yes, because I was offended by I was offended by your broadcast, and you seem to be very...
But what were you offended by?
Well, you seem to go on about the migration. There's a legal migration.
We're talking about Rwanda failing. And so what did you ring in to say? The question is, what's the worst policy that you've witnessed in your life? Or how did Rishi Sunak get into such a mess over this particular policy?
I'm not a supporter of Sunak.
No, but what did you ring in for?
I rang him because I was offended, basically. I'm listening to this all the time. There's no positivity.
No, but you were going to provide some positivity.
Exactly. Where would you send these migrants, the illegal migrants that shouldn't be here? Where would you send them?
Well, I don't know that they shouldn't be here until their asylum process has been, application has been processed.
Let's say the process.
Well, then you can send them back to their country of origin. And we could do that under the Dublin Convention.
We can't.
Well, we can.
There have been,
we can.
There's many have been refused visas. They're still here illegally.
Yes, but we are legally entitled to remove these people.
No,
yes, David.
Illegal.
Why are we having a phone-in from 1974?
James,
David.
When did you ever hear of anyone doing anything illegal and then that becoming legal?
Well, Rishi Sunak did it yesterday. Rishi Sunak did it yesterday.
How?
It was illegal to send people to Rwanda, and then he was going to pass a law in the House of Commons to make it legal.
How is it legal?
Because it's not a safe country. Our Supreme Court has decided.
No, you said earlier it's a different government. It's a different country now.
No, but David, I can't do this anymore. I'm really sorry you're offended, but I think it might be a you problem rather than a me problem.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
10:52 is the time. How dare you accuse me of going soft, Luke? That's outrageous. If you're just joining us, we are considering whether or not Rishi Sunak's Rwanda scheme is worse or better than Clement Attlee's famous Tanganyika groundnut scheme. What do you mean you've never heard of the Tanganyika groundnut scheme? What sort of an ignoramus are you? Honestly, do I have to do all the heavy lifting on this programme? What's worse? Rishi Sunak's Rwanda scheme? Anthony Eden's Suez debacle? Margaret Thatcher's poll tax? Tony Blair's Millennium Dome? Or Clement Attlee's Tanganyika groundnut scheme? There's something about the Tanganyika groundnut scheme that just trips off the tongue so beautifully. I'm a sucker for that. You know I am. You've been listening to this show for long enough to know that I get unfeasibly delighted by a sort of felicitous arrangement of words. It's got rhythm. It's got soul. It's got feeling. It's the Tanganyika groundnut scheme. It feels like it should have its own theme tune. The Tanganyika groundnut scheme. Have we found the Steve McLaren clip that I promised to play to people before I forget about it? Can we find, because I want to play that to young Caleb in Eindhoven, who is in the unfortunate and unenviable position of trying to explain to his Dutch friends, who have, of course, just put a genuinely far-right politician at the top of the polls in the Netherlands, what the hell is going on in this country. And I explained to him that when Steve McLaren went to the Netherlands to manage a football team called FC Twente, he did this magnificent thing where he thought that he'd make himself more comprehensible or more amenable to Dutch journalists by speaking in a Dutch, by speaking English in a Dutch accent. I think he's from the northeast, Steve McLaren, but that's not really relevant. And it occurred to me, given that Caleb had never even heard of the Millennium Dome, it occurred to me a lot of people you never would have heard this, and it's a thing of beauty.
I sort of knew when I came here, and Champions League, Liverpool or Arsenal, I thought maybe one of them we would draw, and it is Arsenal. I think one of the toughest teams in the draw, and I think it will be very, very difficult for our players, but also a great experience. We have a young team, and to experience big games, Champions League, Arsenal, at home, the Emirates, will be fantastic for the players, not just for now, but in the future as well.
This must be very special for you personally.
Yeah, of course. It's one of the reasons I came, because a good team, and they qualified Champions League, so it's one of the reasons I came, to draw Arsenal, one of the big teams. Is exciting for everybody.
Arsenal is a big team. What are your chances against Arsenal?
I say, I think we are not just what you call underdogs, but massive underdogs. I think there is no expectations for
what do you call underdogs?
So
go on.
everything is there for a surprise. We have nothing to lose, so we go into the game.
But he's
nice,
not just
relaxed,
changing his accent, is he? He's speaking English as if it's new to
you know
him.
English football by heart.
I do. We know the team very well, and Arsenal very well. So it is nothing new. And I think the players, they know all the Arsenal players. And
there we go. I'm not going to play Joey Barton doing French. The life's too short. No, I won't. Get lost, Ryan, in Wigan.
And
I'm in
charge. It will be good for our players to play against that quality, because anything after that may be a little easier.
Yeah, you have a very talented group, but they don't have a lot of experience in big European games. Is that going to be a problem?
We will see on the night. Some people, they grow with the experience, and I hope the players will take.
How you say underdogs? He's talking to a Dutch journalist, and he says, how you say anyway, I love it. No offence to Steve McLaren. I just think that's a thing of beauty. Jessica's in Sherburn in North Yorkshire. Jessica, how you say underdogs?
Underdogs?
Underdogs.
How do I say it?
Underdogs.
Underdogs.
Thank you.
Underdog?
Underdogs. What did you ring in to say? Is this the worst policy of your lifetime, and how did we end up in this situation?
If I'm honest, I've just been saying to your producer,
yes.
I was watching a clip of Rishi last night, and I don't think he's convinced by it either.
No.
And he was trying to, I think he was trying to be a bit cocky, a bit cool, and was like, well, what else are we going to do, you know? But then he looked back at his podium, and I don't know if you've heard the phrase, tell your face that.
Yes.
His face
Oh,
was
I haven't.
so
I've never heard the phrase "tell your face that." So this is what you say to someone who's being unconvincing.
Yeah, he was saying one thing, but he couldn't have looked less confident if he tried. And I was watching it, and I was like, "All right, then tell your face that." I just don't think he has any confidence in it at all. And I was just saying, I think when they ruled that it was obviously illegal, that was his chance to look strong. He could have turned around and said, "Do you know what? We've got it wrong." And I think he would have got a hell of a lot more backing from the public. And we
never should have done. It's like do you know what he should have said? He should have said it's like the Tanganyika groundnut scheme all over again, and they hung on. They hung on until January 1951. They knew by 1947 that it was going to be a disaster. The weather was wrong. They were rushing it. They hadn't done any research. They hadn't listened to the experts. They should have pulled the plug. But we cannot have, he should have said, another repeat of the famous 1947 Tanganyika groundnut scheme. But here's the thing, and I'm interested in what you think about this. That yesterday, as Natasha Clark, our political editor, explained it to us, the problem is coming within the party from people who don't think this goes far enough. Even though it can't actually go any further, because if it did, the Rwandan government would pull out of the scheme. But logic has never been the strong suit of the Suella Braverman wing of the party. If he'd called the whole thing off, the people who are still cross with him now would probably be the same people that would be most furious about calling the whole thing off, so he wouldn't actually have lost anything.
Well, no, exactly. I think he would have gained. I think people would have almost started, not trust politics, because I just don't believe you can, but I think if he'd have stood firm and said, we got this wrong, we're going to do this instead, we're going to go back to the table and think about this, I think he could have gained. It was an opportunity for the Conservatives to potentially gain those that are maybe umming and ahhing, and he didn't. And now it's just like, oh my God, you are the most unconvincing Prime Minister I've ever watched. Like, it's so obviously wrong what you're doing.
I'm going to give Natasha... I might invite her to our Christmas lunch, even though she hasn't been here very long, if she actually says at a press conference to Rishi Sunak, tell that to your face. Tell your face that.
Yeah.
Tell your face that, Prime Minister.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or Keir Starmer could do it at PMQs. Keir Starmer could do it at PMQs and dedicate it to Jessica in Sherborne, like Jeremy Corbyn used to do. Because I've had a letter off Jessica in Sherborne. Keir Starmer could say, well, as a tribute to Jessica in Sherborne, Prime Minister, tell your face that.
Oh, it was literally the first thing that came out of my mouth as soon as I saw it. It kind of like sheepishly looked back at his podium as if to say, like, oh God, I hope I got that right. And it's like, no, you didn't. Absolutely not.
Thank you, Jessica. Beautifully put. Tell your face that, Prime Minister.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
3 minutes after 11. So a Prime Minister either inherits or introduces a policy which absolutely coats his government in catastrophe, scandal or controversy. It pleases precisely nobody, except perhaps David in Hull. But it doesn't please people to the right of him who don't think that it is vicious or extreme enough, and it doesn't please people to the left of him who think it's too vicious and extreme, and it doesn't please people in the same place as him because it's either illegal or rubbish or both and highly unlikely to work. And it doesn't please anybody because even if it did work, it wouldn't solve any of the problems that it is designed to solve. So question number one, and I'm staying with this because we're having so much unexpected fun today. Question number one is it the worst self-inflicted political injury of your lifetime? 03456060973. Or how did Rishi Sunak end up in such an almighty mess? Because every day it gets worse. That's the extraordinary thing about it. We haven't sent a single asylum seeker to Rwanda, but we will have spent, by this time next year, £290 million. We've already spent £240 million. I'm not even sure that extra 100 million would have come out if it wasn't for the handful of journalists in this country still resisting the urge to become cheerleaders for the Conservative government, some of whom have already, as I told you they would, attempted to rewrite the reality of Boris Johnson's COVID-19 testimony, which is, obviously a national disgrace. But to have a look at some of the coverage, and thankfully not many people are going so low, but the Daily Mail has to, because they now pay him £500,000 a year to write a column, even though some of the evidence yesterday revealed that he was incredibly rude about the Daily Mail. The relationship between reality and reportage has never been more strained. So What have we got? Calvin's in Westminster. Calvin, what would you like to say?
Yeah, hello there, James. Good morning.
Hello, mate.
I was urged to phone in this morning, one, because you were going on about the Millennium Dome.
Yes.
I was working on the Jubilee Line extension at the time, when the Millennium Dome was obviously being built, and Tony Blair and the Queen and everyone went up there on New Year's Eve, and there was a big fanfare, and everyone had to forget about the disaster that was. And even the Jubilee Line extension was a disaster.
Yeah.
But the main reason why I'm ringing in is because of the PPP, the Public-Private Partnership.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yes, of course.
Right, that cost the British taxpayer £1.7 billion when it collapsed. You had a wonderful lady on some while ago called Elaine Chubb.
I'm going to have to steer you back to the concept of a self-inflicted political injury. So, PPP was brought in by John Major's government in '92, and that had exploded under Labour starting from '97. After which they won 2 more general elections. So, just talk me through how it gets filed under self-inflicted injury on a political personality or party.
Right, Ken Livingstone obviously tried to fight that. He fought a court case that cost the taxpayer, again, £10 million against Gordon Brown.
Yeah, but remember they won 2 more elections after it came in. So
that's my point, because the British public didn't bat an eyelid.
So it wasn't really a self-inflicted injury then, was it?
Well, it should have been.
I know it should have. I mean, it should have been, but it isn't. So it doesn't really.
One of your callers quite rightly. I agree with him. To be perfectly honest with you, some people in this country are stupid, or they're just not educated enough on the matters of government and what actually happens, because that was a disaster. Look at the transport system in this country. Even as I say, I worked on the Jubilee Line extension. That overran, and it overcost to about 300 million, I believe.
Yeah, we could pick, HS2 as well. We can pick loads of things that cost a lot of money. That's why I don't think you've quite grasped the rules of the game this morning, Calvin. So the 1947 Tanganyika groundnut scheme, something that was just ridiculous in every imaginable way. I can explain why PPP happened. It takes public expenditure off the books. It encourages private sectors to invest. Inevitably, when government gets into bed with the private sector, they ended up getting rinsed. But it's easy to understand how it happened, and I can understand both the ideological and economic basis for it and the reasons for its failure. Can you explain to me how Rishi Sunak has ended up in such an almighty mess over Rwanda? Because that's kind of the phone-in that the rest of us are having today. Because
his party's split up into different segments like the rest of this country.
Yeah, that doesn't really work as an answer, though, does it? Because that bit would still be true even if he hadn't done it. So how has he ended up in such a deep hole on this particular policy?
Because they haven't got a clue of what they're doing.
Well, you can have that, but but they obviously do, because he keeps he keeps saying it's good, or he's going to do this, or he's going to ban that, or block this, or do the other, and they like it and they don't. And right. He said right about 400 times yesterday. So listen, I'll put PPP on the list, but for the reasons that I've explained, it doesn't really fit the parameters of this morning's challenge. In the way that, for example, Suez, I think, a proper contender, but going to take some beating for the Tanganyika groundnut scheme, which cost us the equivalent of £1 billion and did precisely nothing, and also drips with a sort of post-colonial arrogance in the way that perhaps the Rwanda scheme does as well. But thank you, Calvin. 10 minutes after 11 is the time. Ben's in Brighton. Ben, what's going on?
Oh, thank you so much for taking my call. I would like to say that all the other schemes that your callers have mentioned have probably been done in good faith to try and kind of improve both the lives of Africans and the lives of British people.
Even the poll tax was in good faith, probably?
No, I think it was trying to... look, I loathed it, but I think it was trying to kind of do something about local taxation, which everybody admits was a disaster.
No, I actually agree with you. You and I could explain it in a way that didn't sound bonkers. It might have sounded unjust or it might have sounded unfair, but it wouldn't have sounded absolutely, I can't say the word on the radio, but the stuff that comes out of bats' bums.
I do think that what's happened with this is interesting because I think that they're trying to square an impossible circle.
Yes.
They absolutely know that Britain needs more immigration, and they know that a core constituent of their membership and their voting public need to care deeply about immigration. So what they're going to try and do is pretend that deporting 200 people at a cost of almost £1/3 billion to the country somehow absolves them of the responsibility of now having a total immigration figure of 1.3 million annually, 757,000 net, but 1.3 million annually. This somehow excuses them of that responsibility. Now, I frankly think we need more immigration, not less, but more.
Yes.
But
possibly a little bit better managed. I mean, there's teachers today have been added to the list of professions that simply can't be filled. An unprecedented shortage of secondary school teachers. We can add that to hospitality, health, social care, veterinary area, you name it. I mean, we're going to have to fill these jobs somehow, and it's going to take 20 years. To fill them from within. So I'm inclined to agree with you, although I think that if there was an honesty about the necessity of it, then we could start with the transparency of how it actually works. So where do you rank this policy in the sort of pantheon of self-inflicted political injuries? Is it among the worst? Is it the worst, or is it? Are we suffering from recency bias?
2,500 years ago, I think Caligula made his senator his horse a senator.
I don't know that. I think that might be apocryphal. And also,
so we can't even go 2,500 years back.
I don't know that Caligula's position would have been particularly affected, given the constitutional makeup of Imperial Rome. I don't know that it would have been particularly affected if he had promoted his horse to the Senate. I don't think it would have done him as much damage as Rishi Sunak's Rwanda scheme, Ben.
Oh, my Lord. Okay, on that bombshell, James, have a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend.
I shall do my best. The same to you. Absolutely. 13 minutes after 11 is the time. And mind how you go down in Brighton. I saw Jane Horrocks, the superb actress, sustained a very unpleasant injury after coming off her bicycle, and everyone in A&E, or lots of people in A&E, I read, were blaming it upon Brighton Council's failure to grit the roads properly. They'd all had mishaps on black ice. See that? Look at that hyper-local service there on a national radio station. Richard's in Streatham. Richard, what have you got?
Oh, there. I'm 67, so this is quite a long time ago, and I do remember writing an essay on it in my geography A-level.
Go on.
It's the Great Lime Scandal.
Lime scandal. I know, it was very obscure, isn't it? What year was that?
It lasted from the late 1930s all the way up to the 1950s.
And was it a self-inflicted political injury?
Yes. In as much it was government policy to try to encourage lime production.
Are you yanking my chain, Richard?
No, I'm not. I've got a book here, okay, page 193, Welsh Follies, Secret Stories and Scandals by a guy called Graham Watkins.
Okay.
But I do remember doing an essay for this on mineral extraction in Wales, and I came across it, so my teacher gave me a really good score.
So they were going to turn parts of Wales into lime orchards?
Well, not far off. What was happening was the government was subsidising limestone quarries to produce lime to try to encourage production.
So we're not talking about the citrus fruits then?
No.
No. All right. So I went off on a bit of a tangent there.
Oh, I see. Right. I get you now. I thought you were doing a deliberate pun.
No, I really wasn't. I was struggling to understand what was going on, if I'm completely honest with you. So the Great Limestone Scandal of the 1930s involved.
50s.
Go on.
It was a government policy trying to and did cause an awful. I can't remember. I can't put specific damage to specific politicians.
No.
But it did cause a lot of political embarrassment, shall we say, when the scandal finally came to a head.
Yeah.
So what was happening, the government policy to try to encourage lime production was to subsidise the limestone production in the quarries.
Yes.
But what they were doing was lying through their teeth about how much they were producing. So they were getting these huge subsidies, but producing very little. and eventually a government statistician got hold of the facts and figures. And I'm talking about Wales specifically for this one quarry, but just from one quarry alone, that if the statistics were true, the whole of Carmarthenshire would have been buried in 6 inches of lime. So they were getting huge. So basically, they were ripping the government off. Government policy encouraging limestone production, but actually the limestone productions were lying and getting huge subsidies. Tens of millions of pounds.
Listen, I am absolutely delighted that you've got to reprise your schoolboy success as the prize-winning essay writer of the Great Limestone Scandal of 1937. But in terms of in the context of inclusion in our search for the most ridiculous self-inflicted political injury any government has ever undertaken, I've got 2 problems. The first is that it wasn't the government's fault that the quarry owners ripped them off. It
was to the extent that the government wasn't keeping a proper eye on things.
I get that, but it is still, it's a quibble. It's a quibble, Richard.
Yeah.
And the second quibble is probably a little bit bigger than a quibble. It's a quabble. The second problem I have is that I don't think it was a very big deal.
It was at the time.
Well, you say that. Well, you weren't alive. I wasn't alive. You read about it in one book. It only got 1 page in that whole book.
Well, I was born in 1956. So
but if it was as big a deal as you suggest...
The subsidies went on until the 1970s.
There isn't even a Wikipedia page about it.
I know. I've looked.
Yeah.
I've looked. That just shows how...
what?
Well... It's obscure, but it certainly happened, and it caused a lot of political embarrassment, and it cost the country a huge amount of money.
How much?
£10 million, just one quarry. And this is 1956, I think.
Yeah, but it's not exactly the Tanganyika groundnut scheme, is it?
1959, 10 million. Well, it's certainly in line with the Rwandan cost at the moment.
It is, but it's not. It's all right. I mean, listen, we're not going to fall out over this, are we, Richard? No, I'll put it on the list. I'll put it on the list, but between you and me, I'm putting it in brackets.
Okie doke.
All right.
But it is an interesting one, though.
It certainly is, and the book sounds great.
Yeah.
Who's it by again? Graham, what's his name?
Graham Watkins.
Graham Watkins, there you go. Thank you, Richard. 1118, the Tanganyika groundnut scheme and the Great Limestone Scandal, or the Great Unknown Limestone Scandal of Carmarthenshire. Whew, every day's a school day.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
Martin points out, of course, there's no Wikipedia page for the Great Lime Scandal. Big Lime have been suppressing this story for years. 21 minutes after 11. Today's show has been unexpectedly funny, James, so far. Well, thank Nick Ferrari for that, actually. I just thought Nick was having so much fun with the Rwanda story that perhaps we'd take a moment to be a little bit less serious about it. I mean, it's a very serious business, but when you stop and think about it, it does just become comically awful, unless you're a Rishi Sunak fan or unless you think that the Rwanda plan is a good idea. It's gone a bit Brexity, hasn't it? It's gone a bit... that we that phrase they say, we've never tried true communism. Therefore, you cannot conclude that communism is a bad idea because it's never actually been properly implemented. Mao Zedong didn't do true communism. Joseph Stalin didn't do proper communism. Pol Pot didn't do proper communism. We could still have a go. No one's actually taken Marx's teachings and given them Marx and Engels' teachings and given it a proper run. You've got that with Brexit. There is a great Brexit out there, brilliant Brexit, just goes to a different school. If only people had believed more. If only it wasn't for you pesky Remainers. If only we'd grasped the opportunities it presented us. Please don't ask me what the opportunities are. But if only we'd grasped the opportunities that Brexit presented us. That'll be Farage's next stick when he comes home from the jungle. It'll be, we had all of these wonderful things we could have done and we didn't do them. Just don't ask what they are. That's how it's always worked. And I think Rwanda looks a little bit like that from the right of Rishi Sunak to the sort of really crazy corners of the Commons where Suella Braverman sits with Mark Francois and the rest of them. So it could have been brilliant, this, if only we'd gone further, even though the Rwandan government have made it absolutely clear that if you go any further, we're out. We're keeping the money, by the way, because there's nothing in the contract that says we have to disobey international law, even if you've pretended that you're not disobeying international law by passing legislation in the United Kingdom to say that a place adjudged unsafe by your own Supreme Court is actually safe. On we go. But I would like to... I mentioned that nice comment about the show being unexpectedly funny. I would like to remind you of the seriousness of the second question that we're asking this morning, which is a genuine inquiry into how Sunak has ended up in such a mess. Because, he would have known before it was reported last night that they'd already spent another £100 million on a scheme that has so far sent precisely nobody anywhere. Except, as Keir Starmer pointed out at PMQs on Wednesday, 3 Home Secretaries, 4 if you count Suella Braverman twice, 4 Home Secretaries have now gone to Rwanda and been photographed signing documents. That's it. And that's cost us £290 million. When he became Prime Minister, he would have known that this was a really silly policy that was unlikely to be workable, because that is what all of the legal advice was telling him. That was, £3 million worth of court battles later. The legal advice turned out to be correct. You're not allowed to do it. They buried the limestone story, is a text that just came in, which I think deserves at least an honourable mention in Dispatches. Well played. They buried the limestone story. So why, if he'd knocked it on the head at the outset and told Suella Braverman to come up with something that worked, I think that might have been better politics from his point of view, don't you? So look, forget about Rwanda. Our advice is, but then all the headbangers say, well, we must abolish the courts. We must leave the international conventions. Down with human rights, which of course they do. I might put on a funny voice when I say that stuff, but this is literally what a lot of these people who are actually in Parliament want. Forget about judges, leave international conventions, down with, NATO, down with the European courts, down with the frameworks put in place by people like Winston Churchill, well, not like Winston Churchill, by people including Winston Churchill, to safeguard continental Europe against ever falling into Nissan warfare again. But hey-ho, who are you going to trust? Seriously, when push comes to shove, the vision of Winston Churchill or the intellectual acuity of Marc Francois? It's no contest. Francois all day long. So he could have done that. He could have said, look, Rwanda's a dead duck. I wish it wasn't. I wish it were. But we've got to find a third country that's safe. That's all they had to do. But, of course, the minute they start looking for a third country that's safe, they're probably looking at a country that has got its own issues with immigration or has got its own priorities to address. So it is pushed into a position where it needs to go to countries or to a country that is not really fit for the job. And then they just have to cross their fingers. And when it turns out that it wasn't fit for the job, they have to sort of pretend that it could be. And that's where we are now. Marcus Chown, the science writer who often rings the programme, makes an excellent point. He says Rwanda knows how desperate Sunak is. He actually made this point before news of the £100 million broke. This is from December the 6th. So this is just before the story broke overnight. He says Rwanda knows how desperate Sunak is to get the Rwanda scheme running. Rwanda is in a strong position while Sunak is in a weak position. It does not take a genius to guess that Rwanda can exploit this to get loads more money. How much more money has Sunak secretly promised? Asked Marcus Chown yesterday evening. And then, of course, he woke up, I beg your pardon, on Wednesday evening. And then, of course, he woke up on Friday morning to discover that £100 million on top of the £140 million for zero refugees had already gone. So Rwanda laughing, if you like, all the way to the bank. Claire's in Dartford. Is it the worst policy of your lifetime, Claire?
Apart from selling the water.
Yeah, but that's not a self-inflicted injury, is it? Because at the time that was a popular policy. Lots of people voted for Margaret Thatcher after the privatisation because they'd made a few quid.
But then HS2.
Well, what's the injury? Calling it or abolishing it?
Well, the theory of it was okay, but the practice of it was all wrong.
It hasn't damaged the government, though.
No, but now they've cancelled it. It is just a nightmare.
But no one's holding that. I mean, that's not going to come back and bite them on the bum every week, is it, in the way that the Rwanda policy is?
No, this is true. But the Tanganyika
groundnut, Tanganyika groundnut scheme.
That is bad.
Yeah, that's awful.
But
do you remember it? Do you remember it, Claire?
No, I'm not old enough.
I'm sorry. That's very ungallant of me. What a rude question. I do apologise.
I'm not old enough yet.
No.
I feel it.
Well, no, you'll never be old enough to remember. It doesn't matter how old you get, Claire. You're never going to remember the Tanganyika groundnut scheme.
But Attlee's saving grace was that he did build homes for heroes.
He did.
And...
Well, that's why I think that, fascinating though the Tanganyika groundnut scheme is, I don't think it was that big a factor in the 1951 election. I could be wrong.
No, I don't think so either.
So that doesn't...
The food was important after the war.
So how has Rishi Sunak ended up in such an almighty mess on Rwanda?
Because he's got money, so money's of no value to him.
Yeah.
So he doesn't care how much he's throwing at it.
You know, yeah.
You see, so there's no concept there that's like, he's some loose change in my pocket.
I'd make him pay it himself.
He should.
He should, shouldn't he? He should. He can afford it. He's good for it.
Yeah, I said to your producer, you have so many people going on about, all these people coming over here, claiming benefits and sitting there, which isn't true.
No, I know.
Which isn't true, and people are sick and tired of it. I've got nothing against people coming here. We need people.
Why do you hate British values, Claire?
Why do I hate British values?
That's what Rishi Sunak would say, because when he makes all of these announcements about clamping down on this and banning that and blocking the other, he claims he speaks for the British people.
Well, he's not speaking for a majority of the British people.
Well, I'm not sure he is either, actually, but he's very confident of it all. I wonder what the law would be. If you can change a law to make a cat a dog, I wonder if you can change that. If Keir Starmer came in and said, we're gonna hold Rishi Sunak financially responsible for the Rwanda scheme, he's going to have to pay it himself.
It'd be good.
He might have to sell a couple of houses. It would be good, that. I like it. I mean, I'm not putting HS2 on the list. I'm not. It feels like Room 101, this, doesn't it? I'm not putting that on the list. The Tanganyika groundnut scheme is in second place, but at the moment, Rishi's Rwanda... Well, can you think of something that begins with R to describe Rishi's Rwanda roundabout? Does that work? Rishi's Rwanda roller coaster? Rishi's Rwanda... You want a word for like a nightmare that begins with R? I've got nothing. 11:31 is the time. Thomas Watts has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
11:33 is the time. Well, you're kind enough to join in, so the least I can do is acknowledge some of them. Jaggers writes, Rishi's Rwanda ruination. Gary says, Rishi's ruinous Rwandan wreck. That's quite nice, actually. Rishi's ruinous Rwandan wreck. Rishi's Rwanda rocky road, says Agatha, who I had the pleasure of meeting the other night. How lovely to see you again, Agatha. Tony writes, Rishi's Rwanda wreck. Rishi's Rwanda ruination is popular. Rishi's Rwanda wrecking ball. Rishi's wreck is getting a lot of support. I think I couldn't see wreck because it begins with W, and in my head I was only looking at R's. The Tanganyika groundnut scheme does sound like an Andrew Lloyd Webber musical in the making, says Gareth, which we like. Rolex is getting a lot of votes on text, oddly, more than Twitter. Rishi's Rwandan Rolex. I think we're probably going to have to go with that, aren't we? Because that is a word that is often used on the programme as a form of rhyming slang. Ruin. Rishi's Rwanda ruin. Rishi's ruinous. Rishi's Rwanda Rolex. Rishi's Rwanda Rolex. Rishi Sunak. Anyway, this is not the most important part of our tasks today. We're trying to find a self-inflicted political injury more ruinous than Rishi's Rwanda Rolex. Gary's in Calais in France. Gary, what
Hi, James.
Hello, mate.
Hi, James. I've spoken before. I wasn't alive with this one, funny enough, but I'd go with the world turned upside down. The British government trying to force the American colonies to carry on paying taxes that gave you the American War of Independence, that leads to the French Revolution, that gives you the Revolutionary Wars, Napoleon, the 19th century, almost to where we are today.
Are we oversimplifying that moment in history? Was it simply the insistence that the colonies carried on paying taxes back to George the Third, wasn't it? George the Third.
Did it through the government to support wars, etc. That gave you the Boston Tea Party. You end up almost with with Germany being voted the language of. Imagine if that had happened after the victory in the War of Independence. But direct from the British government, pay your taxes.
Yeah, but what could they have done differently?
I think they could have turned around and said no taxation without representation.
So they should have allowed American representatives in Westminster?
Well, haven't we got that all of a sudden that we've got representatives from Scotland in Parliament?
Yeah, I mean, America's a little bit further away, but a
little bit further away than it was then.
I hear you. Well, no, it's still as far away now as it was then. It hasn't moved. I mean, unless you're going to get talking about tectonic plates or something like that, and I don't think we need any of that at this point in proceedings.
No.
So if they had recognised, so there's no point in having colonies if you're not rinsing them for all the money you can get. We can agree on that, right?
Yeah, we were, and the point the British, well, they could make as well, what we're actually getting out of America at the time,
so they should have
timber and stuff like that. The main thing, remember, that we always wanted to support, forget we're going to lose America, and support the West Indies that was giving you spices, etc., coffee. That was where the money was.
And the slavery.
The money was not within America. Exactly.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'd say it's probably the best play so far, certainly the best play since the Tanganyika Groundnut Scheme. I can't even say it anymore, the Tanganyika Groundnut Scheme.
Funny
it's bigger
you
than
mentioning that.
Oh yeah,
because when I was an apprentice back in the 70s, my Sparks was shop steward.
Oh yeah.
So the conversations at lunchtime, we're up in Fleet Street at the Daily Express in the canteen.
Gosh.
And Suez would be mentioned, lads would come in. The weird thing was when anyone mentioned the Groundnut Scheme, everyone fell about laughing.
It was a byword, was it, for political comedy?
Yeah, I'm talking 74,
30 years
75.
later. 30 years later.
And then now the first reference of it, apparently, even at the time, there's a British film called Best Days of Our Lives.
Oh, yeah.
Alistair Sim. And the last scene where they're walking along the train station, Margaret Rutherford says to him, "My brother is becoming involved in a scheme in Africa to do with groundnuts." And even at the time they were going, "This is mad."
And everyone would have known that that's what it was about. It was like a joke. It was a punchline at the end of the film.
It was the last line in the film, Best Days of Our Lives, Alistair C., Margaret Rutherford, they're walking along the platform. It was the forerunner of St. Trinian's movies, apparently. And they turned around and he said, "What are we going to do now? We've both got the sack." And Alistair Sim's the headmaster. She's the headmistress. She said, "Don't worry, my brother is running this scheme, etc., in Africa."
And we're going to go out there. And that was the punchline. Is it? They're off to do that. I love it. Crikey.
Yes.
While you're on, how has he ended up in such a mess on this one, do you think, Gary?
Obstinacy, stupidity, cannot see the wood for the trees. He's going with it. He's so far down. What else can he do? And he's in a hole, and he can't get out of it.
I mean, he could stop digging. To take your figure of speech and go with the obvious, he could stop digging. But yesterday he got out a little JCB.
Exactly. Well, but a little JCB, top of the range, I'd say.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Any intelligent person would go, "Well, stop it now, draw a line under it, it's 300 million quid, that's it, forget it."
Yeah.
But no, they're going to go deeper with this.
So throwing good money after bad. Deeper
Don't
and deeper.
reinforce failure.
Don't reinforce failure. I like that. Also, I like obstinacy and stupidity. I mean, it's a lethal combination, isn't it? And it's hard to come up with a more complicated analysis of. You've got the people to the right of him still complaining that it's not gone far enough, even as Rwanda has explained why they can't. But yeah, I mean, what would have happened if he just said no? I suppose that the whatever the party that that Tice fellow leads, I can never remember which one is the lad from Lewis who didn't play Lewis and which one is Farage's sort of butler, but reform or reclaim or what one of them would hoover up all the potential Tory votes from people who don't really understand anything but hate immigration. Thank you, Gary. Matt's in Lincoln. Matt, what do you reckon?
I'm with you 100% on Sunak's obstinacy, like the last guy just said.
He was good,
but the lady, your last lady that rang in, got it part right, as did yourself when she said water.
Go on.
The water, electric, gas, steelwork, everything she hived off, including council houses, she got away with because it was making people a little bit better off.
But that's why we can't chalk it up as a self-inflicted political injury. It might have been bad for the country, but it was good for the government that brought it in.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. However, she brought the poll tax in.
She did.
And that was the beginning of the end. You didn't just have marches, you had riots.
Yeah.
I can't think in my time of voting, you've actually had riots on the streets.
Mm.
I mean, that was the one. Ultimately, Geoffrey Howe made his speech. I think that was more to do with Europe, actually.
Yes, it was. I mean, 1990, they were still in power for another 7 years after the poll tax was introduced, you know.
Yes, but not her. Her credibility had gone after that. I mean, she was making people money, albeit short term, on the shares.
Yes.
Because as soon as they got to a good level, they sold them off. I mean, I think 70% had been sold on within a year or 2 years.
Yes.
As the council homes, she sold 1.2 million, and people loved it. But as soon as she hit, I mean, you only had to hit a married couple, and you've doubled her tax.
Yeah.
She doubled her tax.
It was a very bizarre piece of legislation. A single flat rate per capita tax on every adult.
Unbelievable.
Set by the local authority. So
could you imagine bringing that in now?
No. Well, Liz Truss probably would have tried. Liz Truss would have had a go. But you can see, I mean, the reasoning behind it, the abolition of the rating system based on a kind of like estimated rental value of a house. I mean, we kind of went back to that in a way with the council tax. That wanting to sort of, it was about taking the power of raising these revenues away from, I think, local authorities, which were often Labour run, and bringing them back under Tory control at central government. So there was a rationale behind it, wasn't there? But
if you have two children that were still at home over the age of 18, she's quadrupled. One tax was 4 taxes. I mean, people didn't believe. They didn't. I don't think it's a little bit like the bedroom tax.
But if you were if you were an old age pensioner living on your own, then your payment would have gone down actually. And the idea was that each person pays it, but no one ever separated it from the household issue, did they? So that's why they called it a poll tax. Everyone with a vote pays this fee, but it was replacing a fee that was paid per household. So. It was. I mean, the Tories hung on, as Stephen in Sheffield points out, but Thatcher did not. So we're gonna. I'm glad. I mean, I'm surprised that we've got.
She didn't make that 9 years.
She didn't. You're absolutely right.
Thankfully, and that's another reason. By the way, that's another reason. I've been voting Labour for 49 years. Starmer finished me last week. If he thinks Thatcher's the way to go with her sense of purpose,
right? I'm going to come here.
He's on a loser.
No, I respect that, but did you read the article?
No, I read the salient points.
You didn't.
And as soon as you
didn't read the salient points.
That Thatcher is the way to go.
No, he didn't say. He didn't say that, Matt. I promise you. Tell me what you think he said.
I'm going on headlines.
Yeah, well, never go on headlines. Go on detail. Go on what he actually said.
I'm quite happy. Go on then. Yeah,
all he said was that she belongs on a list with Clement Attlee and Tony Blair as a Prime Minister who made impactful change to the country without actually passing judgment on whether the changes were largely good or largely bad. And the phrase that he used, which has been construed as a compliment, and I think was intended as such, was this and only this, that she let loose our natural entrepreneurialism. That is all he said in praise of Margaret Thatcher.
I'll give you that. I'll stand corrected on that one.
So has he got your vote back?
I'm speaking to Hamish Falconer very soon about it, and I'll have a conversation with him. He's the candidate for Lincoln.
Well, then he will reiterate what I've said, and I hope you enjoy that conversation. There's a seat in the House of Lords with my name on it, Matt, I reckon. If I tell you what, the highly unlikely event of me getting a seat in the House of Lords ever, I tell you all I'd do is put on all the robes and go and sit outside Nadine Dorries' house.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 11:48. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. So the poll tax, probably, because it is just so much more significant. But you know that the Rwanda story is far from over. I mean, if we were having this conversation 10 years from now, it would be Rishi Sunak and Rwanda, Clement Attlee and the Tanganyika groundnut scheme, and Margaret Thatcher and the poll tax. No one's had a crack at properly explaining why Suez was such a self-inflicted injury. I don't know how much electoral damage Suez did to Anthony Eden. I'm afraid I haven't got the Latin, as Peter Cook would have said. I haven't got the history. It must have been pretty significant, but it was more about a realisation of Britain's diminished status on the world stage. The thing about Britain is that when objective observers recognise the reality of Britain's diminished status on the world stage, a lot of people in the Conservative Party deny that Britain's status is diminished on the world stage. So, I don't know how that one played out. I don't know how they span it. I don't know what the equivalent of Twitter at the time of Suez would have been, with Rishi Sunak just releasing pictures insisting that he's played a blinder when everybody can see that he hasn't. Sarah is in Bristol. Sarah, what would you like to say?
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome.
It's incredibly simple thing I want to say, and I hope you don't think it's too simple.
I can promise you I won't.
Oh, thank you.
You're very welcome.
It's just this Rwanda plan, and all the talk, and all the money, and the High Court judges, and the Rwandan president now piling in Court of Human Rights.
Yeah.
At its very inception, James, was this not the most stupid idea that was ever conceived of? It's not even an idea. An 11-year-old child could work out it's not an idea. If you're going to try to repel desperate people who have floated from a horrible place across dangerous water, and the channel is so dangerous, and you're going to use that as a deterrent, then it just says that Rwanda is not a suitable place for human beings.
Yes, I mean...
Am I getting that across?
No,
they don't need all this.
No.
It should never have got off the ground because it doesn't make simple sense.
And it never did. I mean, I think if I were to be generous, then they honestly thought... Because I think the last case before the Supreme Court was 2-1. So there was obviously a judge who was happy with it or prepared to pass it. They probably just thought that they were on a sticky wicket but had a chance of winning. So they wouldn't agree with our analysis that it was obviously and clearly doomed from the start. So because that judge there in the appeal court was okay with it, he gave it the green light.
But to use deportation to a country as a deterrent to anybody else doing it is equivalent to a horrible prison sentence without a trial. It is, in its basic elements, it's irrational.
Yeah.
And I thank you for letting me say that.
No, I'm grateful to you for saying it. So in the great scheme of things, do you think it's the most pungent self-inflicted injury?
Pungent self-inflicted for this government?
For any government in your lifetime, can you think of a stupider, high-profile policy that has fallen apart in real time in their own hands?
Only Brexit, which I thought was the worst piece of history in our history.
Yeah,
I thought it was the worst event in our... I'm a bit of a historian, and I have not come across anything as stupid as this. But this is just as stupid. There is no possible justification for doing this. At base, it doesn't work, and it cannot be ever called anything humane. Because if it's a deterrent to desperate people, then it's a horrible place. Which is unfit for humans to be sent to.
Well, yes. I mean, there it is. It is unsafe until it isn't. And the reason why it isn't can be for two reasons. It can either be because Rwanda have cleaned their act up and rendered their country safe, according to the judgment of our own Supreme Court, or it's because Rishi Sunak has passed a law saying that it is now safe. It was unsafe yesterday, but we've changed the law and now it's safe. And that, of course, is what he's done. I mean, for fans of the detail, I think the problem is actually going to be the capacity or the room within the new legislation that allows specific individuals to challenge decisions on the basis that that specific individual would be unsafe in Rwanda. So they want to take that away. The sort of Suella Braverman lot just want to send people... Look, there are two types of Tory. There are Tories who just don't care whether Rwanda is safe or not, and there are Tories who do. They're all in favour of sending people there. That's just a tragedy of our times. It probably wouldn't have been the case if that cull hadn't occurred in 2019, but they're all either genuinely in favour of it or pretending to be in favour of it for reasons of personal ambition. Some of them think we needed the country to be safe before we send asylum seekers there, and some of them don't care at all whether the country is safe or not. And Sunak's challenge is that he's trying to keep both sides happy, and he can't. And that's why the Suella Braverman wing don't care about whether or not it's safe or unsafe. They want to send people there regardless, and they want to take away any individual appeal to the law. But Sunak has sort of changed the general designation of Rwanda as a safe country, which won't, I don't think, reading the legal minds I most admire, it won't close the door to specific individuals challenging decisions made about them. Thank you, Sarah. Richard's in Aylesbury. Richard, what have you got?
I'd like to put Liz Truss in the mix there, because she basically shot herself right in the foot with tax cuts that were totally unfunded.
Yeah.
Cost the country 57 billion, something along those lines.
Yeah, give or take. And it did, yeah. I mean, the thing about that is it happened so quickly, didn't it? It was all over in the blink of an eye.
And even now she's trying to kind of say that was still the right decision. I don't understand why these people...
I think she blamed you last time I saw it. She said it was all Richard in Aylesbury's fault that my plan didn't work out.
Well, I only earn 40 billion a year, so...
So it's all down to the anti-growth tofu coalition or something. I forget the exact details. But yeah,
well,
so that...
Not only did she self-inflict harm on herself, she also actually metaphorically shot her friend Kwasi Kwarteng at the same time.
Well, they did it to each other. It was like a sort of circular firing squad, I think, rather than a kind of one of them being more responsible than the other.
Only you could make a circle out of two people, James.
Well, you know what I mean. It's they've got their arms out. They've got their arms spread out. So I don't know that, because obviously in one way you're right, and the Trust budget was much worse than Rwanda, and it did do for her. It did undermine, but it feels different to me from a sort of unavoidable point. She had to do. She would feel that she had to do it, and that it was the right thing to do because she's a bit stupid, and she was surrounded by Tufton Street people who've been shilling for this kind of rubbish for decades, as is explained in the rather splendid new bestseller How They Broke Britain by James O'Brien. But the Sunak stuff, the reason why I think it's unique is it's so deliberate. The Truss stuff feels like an accident. Do you see what I mean? Truss is like someone who's sort of fallen over, or she's ridden her bicycle onto a frozen lake by accident. Whereas Rishi Sunak has arrived at the frozen lake with a bicycle and announced that he is going to ride across it like a genius. And he's fallen through the ice halfway across.
Well, funnily enough, I read somewhere that there's a lettuce somewhere waiting for his job when he's gone next week, so...
We shall see. We shall see. I mean, I said to Eleanor this morning, and neither of us are very excitable people, but I said I think they're going to do it again. I think they're going to have another crack at changing leaders before the next general election, and most people in the office don't agree at the moment. And I'm not putting this on the Keith Get the Tin list, because I've got a 100% record when it comes to predictions about what Brexit was likely to do or what Boris Johnson was likely to do in office. I don't want to spoil my 100% record, but I am currently, to deploy a completely random ratio, I'm currently 52% to 48% persuaded that they are mad enough, that wing of the Tory party, to at least try. And I think the fact that whatever the chairman is called this week said yesterday that they'd be mad to try it means that they think that they're going to as well. Is it Richard Holden? Richard Holden. No, me neither. Richard Holden said that they'd be insane to try another leadership bid. That means that they're at least contemplating it. Because if they're not contemplating it, you don't say, it would be insane to contemplate another leadership bid. You laugh at the suggestion that they can't. You say, it would be ridiculous. If there is another leadership bid, then you'd be like Michael Fish talking about that lady who'd written into the BBC saying she'd heard there was a massive hurricane on the way. You'd be like, oh, calm down, dear. Don't be ridiculous. There's no point whatsoever worrying about a leadership. But he didn't. He said, they'd be mad. They'd be mad to try it. The problem is, as Richard Holden perhaps understands, I don't know enough about him to really speculate on his intelligence or lack of, the problem is they are mad. They're all mad. They're all completely mad. So the worst thing in many ways that a Tory chairman can say when he's asked about the prospect of a leadership challenge is to say, well, they'd be mad to try that. You're talking about Suella Braverman. You're talking about Mark Francois and Jacob Rees-Mogg and Liz Truss. Oh, that you'd have to be mad to think. Have you met these people? I don't know that suggesting you would need to be mad to contemplate a specific course of action is a very effective diffusing tactic when the people about whom you are talking are clearly and demonstrably as mad as a box of frogs. I don't know what we're going to do next. I've got a serious one and a silly one. All right? So text me serious or silly, and then I'll decide what topic we're going to do after 12.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 3 minutes after 12. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. It's overwhelmingly silly. Some people calling for serious, not many. I've got to be honest, it's about 95% silly, would you say? 95%? 90 to 95% silly. And the last 2 hours have been amusing, but they haven't been silly. It's a serious story. I got one slightly po-faced text saying it's all very funny unless you're an asylum seeker, but we weren't in any way making light of asylum seekers. I certainly wasn't suggesting that there is anything wrong in the prospect of people who are unsafe in Rwanda being brought to Britain as refugees. That is, I suppose, a temptation for people who don't recognise their own racism sometimes. Is you think that the idea of someone from Rwanda coming here is funny just because they're Rwandan. It's funny in the event that the British government has sought to appease anti-refugee sentiment by sending nobody out of the country and inviting some people in. But I don't think that the way that we've handled that really lends itself to any accusations of insensitivity. Si gets the casting vote. He says, my mental health needs it today, James. Silly, please. Right, I'm going to be quite strict on this, actually, because otherwise it could get a bit silly. No, silly's good. It could get a bit repetitive and dull, even as it was simultaneously silly. You can be silly and dull at the same time. The technical term is dilly. So I don't want to be dilly. I want to be specifically silly. 21 million people suffer injuries while preparing for Christmas. That's the overall total. Research suggests that 21 million of us have injured ourselves during festive activities, which prompts at least one newspaper to go with the headline. Can you guess? 21 million people have injured themselves getting ready for Christmas. Can you guess what the headline is? Oh, come on. Elf and safety? Or you could perhaps have call the National Elf Service. I'd have gone with that, actually. I think that's probably better. Call the National Elf Service. 21 million suffer injuries preparing for Christmas. Don't ring in yet. 5% of people hurt themselves lifting the tree. 5% of people fell off a chair while hanging up baubles or lights. 6% burnt themselves with hot oil. That's not funny. Don't ring in if you burnt yourself cooking. I'm going to give you the criteria for inclusion in a minute, so stop ringing me, all right? 7% have cut themselves chopping vegetables. This is from King Edward VII's Hospital in London, which has obviously employed a very clever PR person to get their name in the paper. It's a private hospital, and it's worked, because here we are talking about a survey of 2,000 people that found 40% had been injured during the festive season. You extrapolate from that to discover that 21.3 million adults across the UK, with a small proportion of that having ended up in A&E, and 4% cancelling a holiday as a result. Musculoskeletal, that's a nice word. Ooh. Put my teeth in. Musculoskeletal. You'd have thought it was musculoskeletal. Musculoskeletal. That's a lovely word. Were the most common affliction, but also tripping over presents, lifting heavy gifts. My personal favourite so far, falling out of the loft while being up there getting out Christmas decorations. So that is a little clue as to what the criteria for inclusion are going to be. It has to somehow be simultaneously awful and hilarious, right? So it's a Christmas injury that speaks of epic stupidity. So it's the thing that you look back on and you can't believe that you did the thing that led to the injury. So you can't say, I was cooking a turkey and it spat and I got burnt. because that you're never going to look back and say, what was I thinking of cooking a turkey on Christmas Day? Because of course you were cooking a turkey on Christmas Day, but it was when you put the dining room chair on top of the dining room table and couldn't quite reach the lampshade to put the tinsel on it, so you sort of. But do you see what I mean? You look back now and you think, because you'd only do it at Christmas. That's the other criteria. So it's got to be something that you can't quite believe you did, the thing that led to the injury, and it only would have happened at Christmas. So, you know, I'm a big fan of people falling through floors. You're up in the loft. You can't find the basis, you know, the base of the Christmas tree, the thing you stick the tree in. God knows where that spends 11 months of the year. So you're crawling around in the loft and you know that, I'll just look, I crash, bang, wallop, you land up in the bedroom. But it can't be. So some of these things would not make the cut, all right? You would not make the cut if you got burnt cooking, or I don't know if you would and also it's got to be funny without being too horrible. I don't know that we want any actual deaths, do we? No, that would be profoundly unfestive. A Heimlich manoeuvre based hijinks, probably not. Someone choking on a parsnip, because you're not going to look back and think, what was I thinking eating a parsnip at Christmas? Do you see what I mean? So those, I think I don't want to make it too hard to get in. I don't want it to be too strict. So those, I think, are the only two things I'm going to do. So the reason that you got the injury involved behaviour that, in retrospect, is spectacularly stupid, all right? Or silly. You can't believe that you actually did the thing that led to the injury that you got. So the injury doesn't have to be that serious, although there are extra points for ending up in A&E, or calling on the National Health Service. Extra points if you had to call the National Health Service. But it's the thing, you look back now and you say to people, oh, do you remember that time? And you go, yeah, I don't know what I was thinking of when I did that thing that led to the injury. So the thing you did that led to the injury is more important than the injury itself. 03456060973. The second thing is it had to be Christmas. You would not have done the thing you did that led to the injury unless it was Christmas. So, you know, it involved there being presents under the tree or something. You can't just be a general mishap that could have happened on any other day of the year. But, you know, you chopped your thumb off when you were making roast potato. That could have happened any other day of the year, any other Sunday. So what was the Christmas element of the catastrophe, of the personal catastrophe, all right? So there's only two rules this hour. The first is the thing you did that led to the injury is retrospectively ridiculous. Rule number one, retrospectively ridiculous. Rule number two, specifically Christmassy, specifically Christmas related, all right? Let's see how we get on. Manuel is in Valencia. Manuel, what happened?
Okay, so bought a Christmas tree, came in a box from the online company, always with the receipt in the bottom of the box.
Yeah, a fake tree. A fake
box. Yeah, fake tree. Yeah,
right,
well, they're better than
no! Don't get me started on that. I might do that next Friday. It's a fake tree. It comes in a box.
Anyway, yeah. So I got the tree out, and the receipt was in the bottom of the box. So I just thought, well, I'll get the receipt out just in case, you know, you open it out and one of the branches is broken. Anyway,
you mean the instructions, or anyway, the paperwork?
No, it's the paperwork, yeah.
The paperwork.
So I stuck my hand into the box and I couldn't reach it.
Yeah.
So I leaned over a little bit more.
Yeah.
And within literally another second, I got hold of it. And as I got hold of it, I fell into the box upside down and I couldn't get out because it was too narrow. My hands were stuck at the bottom and I couldn't get out. I had to call my wife. She had to tip me over slowly because I couldn't. I was literally upside down in the box. I couldn't move. It happened so fast. I just couldn't move. Yeah, Christmas.
I like that. What were you wearing? I'm not being weird. I'm just wondering because ideally you'd have had wellies on.
I had normal clothes on. I had slippers on. They came off straight away. But honestly, I was upside down within seconds.
So it's quite a rigid.
You know that point where you're reaching over.
Yes. I broke a rib. I broke a rib trying to clean our sort of giant paddling pool the other day, or at least I very heavily bruised it. I couldn't laugh on the show. I couldn't have done this topic a couple of months ago, Manuel, because every time...
yeah, exactly.
Oh, I was in agony every time I laughed. And that involved me leaning over. I was trying to get the net out the bottom of the pool, and then I felt something crack. So it was quite a rigid box there. Well, it would have to be, wouldn't it, to deliver to get the tree to you safely?
Yeah, it was just actually... Well, it was like reinforced cardboard.
Yes.
So there was no give. There was no give in it.
No give at all.
Honestly, yeah.
What?
No.
I mean, and you... I'm just thinking what went through your head. You didn't want to wobble or wiggle and fall over deliberately yourself because you could have done yourself an even worse injury.
That's right, because I opened it in the back room and it was quite near the wall, and I'm thinking if I fall over with this thing, I could hurt myself. So I was literally upside down.
Mate, you've moved into an early lead with your feet wiggling.
Move.
With your slippers had gone south. And was your wife as sympathetic?
She thought it was quite funny.
She should have left you there for a bit longer, shouldn't she? She should have started negotiations, Manuel. Who's cooking the meal this year, Manuel? She could have let me out, get me out of this pot. Thank you. That is a perfect illustration of both criteria. And in fact, you didn't particularly do yourself an injury, I don't think.
In the end, no, I didn't.
Well, that's allowed. It's a mishap.
But have you ever been locked in a place like where you didn't want to be? Like
I went to boarding school for 10 years, mate.
Oh yeah, that was okay. Stop there then.
It's stuck in a thing. It's coming up to 12:15. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. So it doesn't even need to involve an injury now. Manuel has moved the goalposts already. I love that. So a mishap, but you can't believe the thing you did. Looking back, that led to the mishap or the injury, and it could only have happened at Christmas. It's 12:15.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 16 minutes after 12. All human life is here today. Susha's been in touch to say, I'm not convinced that was Manuel. It sounded like my cousin Raj from Leicester, and I mean it literally. I don't know what that even means as a message. But anyway, we're looking at mishaps caused by Christmas, but also your own madness, your own deep, deep silliness. And just as a side order of seriousness, there'll be at least 2 side orders of seriousness this hour. There's a couple of stories I'm going to bring to your attention. So if you find all this very frivolous and immature, don't worry. I will be looking after your needs as well. YouGov have conducted their latest poll for the Times. Fieldwork was done on the 6th to the 7th of December, so Wednesday to Thursday, and it's holding steady. So Labour 23 points ahead of the Conservatives, 45 for Labour, 22 for the Tories. Under current electoral arithmetic, the Tories need to be getting close to 40 to be in with a chance of winning. Louise is in Ongar. Louise, what happened?
Hello. I'm not making light of this story because it's actually terrible, but my mum is fine now.
Okay.
So, setting the scene, we had Christmas Day, everyone was round, all the kids, and I bought my kids Segways for Christmas.
Yeah.
So my mum comes round, she's in her 60s. She puts the Bolero music on the Alexa.
Yeah.
Gets on the Segway. She's going round. She's doing quite well.
Had she had an eggnog at this point in proceedings?
No, she hasn't. No, she hasn't.
Okay.
No, she's not. But she's really thinking she's very good at it.
Having a go on the Segway. But, this is for people who don't know. It's a sort of electric vehicle that involves leaning, really, to get it to move, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's about like core strength, which I was surprised she had, but she did. And when I see her going towards my front room, which I knew there was a rug in there.
Right.
So she's on tiles. So she's gone to the front room. All I've heard is thud.
Yeah.
She's knocked herself out.
No.
She fell off of the Segway. She's knocked herself out. So we've got her onto the settee, and, my dad, no sympathy at all.
Really?
He's saying, she'll be fine, she'll be fine,
but
give her a minute, she'll be fine.
She's spark out.
She's out of it, yeah,
right.
she's completely out of it. And he's like, she'll be fine. And I said, no, she's not, Dad. So we gets her in the car, we takes her to the hospital. She actually had a bleed on the brain.
Oh, bloody hell, Louise, this is supposed to be
funny.
funny.
She was in hospital, I know, I've killed it.
All right.
For like a week. She couldn't drive for a year. So it is quite, bless her. She can't smell now anymore. But she would find it funny if she was listening to this.
Oh, well, I hope she is. I mean...
No, she would.
All right.
She would.
Okay.
Because it's one of them things. If you said who should never get on a Segway,
it would be your
everyone's answer would have been, Louise's mum.
But there's a lovely moment. There's a lovely moment in the story where she thought she'd nailed it, didn't she?
She did.
She thought did. That's pathos, that is. That's pathos. That's script. That's like, finally, they all said I couldn't do it. They all think I'm some mal-coordinated, clumsy...
I know.
Oh, bless her.
But, the worst thing was the kids were videoing her.
So it's all there?
So it's all there,
Has she ever watched it back?
No.
No, you wouldn't,
I
would you?
think, it's not. But, now... my mum can open the car door and fall out the side quite easily, and just be laying there and you think, where's she gone?
Oh, dear. It's a good job you took her to hospital, isn't it? Really?
It is, because, as I say, bless my dad, but he was like, this is Christmas dinner, and, and I can actually remember, ringing my sister up and saying, Laura, Mum's fell off of a Segway and we're now in the A&E. And she was like, what? But she'd only been round my house about half an hour.
Oh, Lord.
So
well,
it wasn't even after the Christmas dinner.
There's a lesson here. That don't let Grandma on the Segway. It sounds like an old music hall song. Don't let Grandma on the Segway. No. Oh, dear. And she is definitely... Oh, crikey. That's all right, Louise, is the limit. Louise has set the limit on how bad things can be while we're still going to have a smile about it, all right? And it can't be any worse.
But she's fine now.
Well, she's not, is she? She can't smell.
Well... It could have been worse.
It could. Can she taste? Does she have a sense of taste?
She can taste, but she can't smell.
That's probably an advantage, isn't it? Unless you've got a gas leak or something.
I think so.
All right. Well, blimey. Thank you. We've gone from I don't know what we've done. We've gone from Old Man Well being stuck in a chimney, I like to think, but it wasn't a chimney. It was a cardboard box, to Louise's mum being, crikey, quite a serious injury. Don't go on a Segway, Grandma, all right? Don't do it. Don't do it. And even without eggnog being taken. Martha's in Keynsham. Martha, what happened?
It's Keynsham, as in Horace Bachelor.
I said Keynsham.
Kane.
Keynsham.
Keynsham. Yes.
All right, what happened?
Hello, James.
Hello.
Lovely to speak to you.
Likewise, Martha.
First-time caller.
Welcome aboard.
Hopefully, my husband's listening at home. I'm really hoping he is, because he's probably hurt himself in the kitchen whilst I'm at work.
Because the story you're about to tell involves him, not you.
Yeah.
Yes.
He'd just finished 8 weeks off work with a slip disc, and it was Christmas, and he was due to go back to work the next day. And the kids were quite young, so we thought, we'll get a proper Christmas tree. So we got a brand new saw to do this Christmas tree. And I went out into the back garden, and he had the Christmas tree upside down.
Yeah.
So the top of the Christmas tree was on the patio.
Yeah.
He was holding the trunk of the Christmas tree below the saw.
Yeah.
And I went out and I said, if you do that, and I didn't even finish my sentence, and he sawed through his tendons.
On his wrist?
On his fingers.
Oh, what a
so
silly
we went
sausage.
in and ran it under the tap, and he said, I think it's all right. And I said, bend your finger, and we could see the bone. So I said to him, it's not all right, love.
So this wasn't Christmas Day, happily. This was just quite early doors.
It was about a couple of weeks before Christmas. Yeah.
Oh, that one's
but
got me.
Totally him. His name's Ben, by the way.
It's Ben.
You can't go away with it.
And it was straight down to A&E, was it?
Yeah, straight to A&E. He was in hospital for 3 days because they couldn't... it was a long, drawn-out thing because they had to go... I know it's really gross, but because your tendons twang,
yeah,
it had gone up his arm. So they had to sort of do this major surgery to get them... So he had to ring in work and say, I can't come back now.
So it's like...
I've gone through my tendons.
It's like when you've got your gloves on a ribbon. And it's gone halfway up your sleeve. It's gone halfway up your sleeve, and you've got to reach.
Exactly that.
Oh, bless him.
30 years we've been married. Honestly, James, he's such a klutz. So I literally follow around. I walk around the house and there's drops of blood in places, and I just go and ask him what he's done.
What? Oh, was he in? We must have been in pain though.
Oh, he has luckily, an extremely high pain threshold.
Well, that's probably natural selection.
It is. I don't know how He was 60 the other day, and I really, honestly, I don't know how he's made it. And I said that to him, I don't know how you've made it.
Well,
He's just read your book as well, James, and he absolutely loved it.
He didn't drop it on his foot. It's bigger than the last one. He didn't drop it on his foot or anything.
No, luckily, he read it in bed, so it was all safe.
It's all nice, soft landings. Well, I'm glad he enjoyed it, and I hope you do as well. Thank you, Martha.
Thank you.
That's a cracker. I love that. I mean, you do see, because you've got to imagine. Always get your Black & Decker workbench out or something like that, or lay it flat, but never ever. It's like the old cartoon about someone sawing a branch off while they're sitting on it. But I do understand how it happens. Francis is in Ascot. Francis, what happened?
Oh, I feel ill after that story.
Was the tendons like going up his arm.
Oh, please, James.
I know. Sorry. Carry on.
Anyway, right, I'll try. I'm quite nervous. I've never actually been on the radio before, so I'll just tell you my story.
Take your time.
Yes, Christmas morning, about 12 people of family arrived, bought my husband a lovely shirt, very proud of myself.
Yeah.
We all sat down after having some champagne, and I said to my husband, we must have a photo of everyone on the table. So he was, unbeknownst, we had candles on the windowsill, and I'm going, stand back, go further back, I want everyone in, and suddenly he reached right back and his shirt went up in flames. And I literally, the first thing I picked up was a Christmas cracker on the table, and I'm whacking his back with the Christmas cracker, and I was so proud of myself. I said, I've saved him with the cracker. And my brother-in-law said, no, I've just hugged him and it came out. And there was me thinking that I saved him, whacking him with a Christmas cracker. What was I thinking of?
That sounds like a figure of speech, that, Francis. So you did, I mean, how much shirt was burnt?
A massive hole.
And he was all right. So he could have gone.
The only thing that saved him was the fact that he had a T-shirt underneath.
Oh Lord! Otherwise, he'd have had some quite nasty burns.
He would have done. Thanks to me.
Well, also, Francis, this was a shirt you had purchased. I think you said.
Yes.
So you clearly,
nice shirt.
yeah, a very nice shirt. Because if you'd gone for some dodgy old man-made fabrics, he would have gone off like a firework.
Yes, it was an expensive one.
I could tell. Like brushed cotton or silk or something like that. If it had been polyester, it could have ended very, very unhappily.
I know. I don't think my husband appreciated the fact that we all couldn't stop laughing after, because I think it was more the shock than anything, because we were just so grateful.
It's a human reaction. It's the fight or flight. You've got the adrenaline pumping around your veins, and it's got to go somewhere. So you turned it into laughter.
Yes, exactly. And I was just thankful that my brother-in-law hugged him.
Hugged him better. Oh, that's lovely. Thank you, Francis. And
Merry Christmas.
Hang on, it's a bit early. Well, no, go on then. No, Merry Christmas.
I want to be the first one to wish you a Merry Christmas.
Well, you are now. Thank you very much. Have you got your tree up yet? Have you got your tree?
Oh, my God. I've got 2 big trees
already.
Yes, already,
yeah. Very ahead of the game. Well, there we go.
Yes,
well,
I am.
Tell your husband
and I've just been wrapping up presents this morning while listening to you.
How delightful to keep me company like that. Make sure you keep him away from naked flames this year, Francis.
I will do. Anyway, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Thank you. 12:27. Rob's in Wokingham. Rob, what happened?
Oh, hi, James.
Hello.
Well, let me set the scene for you. Christmas night, round at family's house, quite late in the evening. We've all been on the sherry, shall we say?
Yeah.
And we decided we should play a game of charades. So we kick off in earnest.
I like a bit of charades.
And I used to. And it was my turn, so I get up to do my thing, and I've picked out Titanic. So there I am, stood there trying to be, Leo. And
what were you doing? Like pretending you were on the prow with Kate Winslet, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought, right, I need to take this to another level. So let's see if I can pretend I'm the ship going down. So I went to twist to make out like a sinking ship, and unfortunately the shag on the carpet was very deep. So
hang on, mate. This is taking a bit of a turn. It's taking a bit of a turn. Was this in front of the whole family?
Shag pile, James. Shag pile.
Beg your pardon.
Yeah.
I was going to say that I don't know that they ever did that. He fell off the door, didn't he?
Yeah, or was it the couch? Who knows? Anyway, I've gone to twist, and because the pile, shall we say, on the carpet was so deep, my foot stayed where it was, but the rest of me twisted and my kneecap fell off.
No, popped out. Actually popped out.
Popped off, and of course, so I've hit the deck like a sinking ship.
Wow.
Everyone around the table is absolutely in fits of laughter because they
thinking it's all deliberate. It's all deliberate.
Yeah.
He's gone down like a tree.
Yeah, I'm wailing like a banshee, and so I thought, right, there's only one thing for this. So I got hold of the kneecap and straightened my leg and popped it back on.
How would you know how to do that?
Because I've done it before in a nightclub on the other leg, James. So,
Flipping out.
Yeah, you know, bit of a pro.
What a life.
Yeah. Anyway, the kneecap popped back on, and then I felt this almighty snap. And I was like, oh, Jesus.
What now?
And I thought, right, what to do? So while I sat there, I phoned the local hospital, spoke to a lovely nurse in A&E, and I said, what do you advise? And she said, well, you've got two choices. You can come in now and sit in the waiting room with all the other drunks, or come back tomorrow morning on Boxing Day and we'll see you straight away. So I opted for the Boxing Day.
Yeah.
She advised I took a large shot of whiskey to sleep on. And, and then ultimately I ended up with 3 months of therapy, hydrotherapy. I should probably add as well that at the time my girlfriend and I were doing a bit of a Ross and a Rachel, so she found it very funny when she found out that I'd done this.
Well, you were on a break.
Yeah, we were on a break. We're now married, and she still laughs about it.
I'm not surprised. So, do you still play charades?
I try and avoid charades at all costs.
Yeah, there you go. So segues and charades so far today. Segues, charades, and reaching into the box to try and retrieve the paper. Well, this has gone a lot better than I even dared to hope. But thank you, Rob. Stay safe. 12:30 is the time. Lottie Morley has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
Could you pick a winner? I'd struggle to pick a winner, but I think the decision to err onto the side of silliness for the final hour that we get to spend together this week was almost certainly the right one. But I do want to introduce some seriousness into proceedings now. It's a story that I've been following on social media and in Prospect magazine, which is a brilliant magazine if you don't already know about it. And it starts in a very odd place. It starts with me saying something that I never thought I would say out loud. It starts with me saying that there was something very interesting in Nadine Dorries' book. Yeah, I thought that would get your attention. And even more remarkably, something that, well, as far as people who have looked into this can tell, something that turned out to be true. Alan Rusbridger, currently the editor of Prospect, former editor, of course, of The Guardian and chair of the Reuters Institute, is the sort of self-appointed scoop hound who's gone after this. What was the story that you stumbled across? Thank you also for reading Nadine Dorries' book on behalf of the rest of us so that we don't have to. But what was the story that you stumbled across, and where has it taken you, Alan?
So on page 81 of Dorris's book, she was Secretary of State for Culture at the time. So she was the person who ultimately made the recommendation about who should chair Ofcom, which is the media regulator, which regulates the BBC. And she reveals that she was called into Number 10 to meet a man called Robbie Gibb, who is a BBC non-executive director, former spin doctor for Theresa May. And another aide, Munira Mirza. And according to Dorries, they both spent a period of time trying to persuade her to appoint one of the two candidates who were still in the race, a man called Lord Stephen Gilbert. But both of the candidates were Tory peers. The other was Michael Grade. And she describes Gilbert as a long-standing party apparatchik. So the Tory party wanted to get a long-standing Tory party apparatchik. And Robbie Gibb, who was a BBC director, i.e. the regulated party, was trying to influence the appointment of the chair of the regulator. So that's clearly improper. You can't have people choosing who's going to regulate you. And that was the basis of the sort of truffle hunt that I went on.
And what have you unearthed, or not?
Well, I've now checked. I've tried to check the story out with Gibb himself, and with Mirza, and with the Cabinet Office, and with Number 10, and with the BBC, and not one of them has denied the story. But they just refuse to say anything about it. So I sent 15 questions to the BBC and got a bland brush off. I then contacted the acting chair of the Board of Governors, thinking that she would at least want to stick by the principles of openness that govern the BBC board. She sent me a very dismissive note saying that she had talked to Robbie Gibb and she didn't believe there was anything in this. But she didn't say the story was untrue. So I think we can take it that the story is true, that a BBC director tried to interfere to get the right person, a Tory party apparatchik, in Nadine Dorris's words, to chair the regulator. And then that just destroys the independence of Ofcom.
I mean, a BBC director who, as you've said, has been on Theresa May's payroll as a director of communication. So although Michael Grade is a Tory peer as well, he's also a media figure of decades standing and would at least. Well,
that was Doris's point. Doris's point was that that Grade was, obviously more qualified. I mean, the story then gets darker.
Well, this is the bit that I did think sounded a bit fanciful. So I don't know if you've dug any further. This is the bit about the box.
Yeah. So she then says that having said that she wouldn't change her mind, she then gets a call from a man called Dougie Smith, who is a shadowy figure inside Number 10 of the Conservative Party, which she described as intimidating and bullying. And she nevertheless puts a note into the Prime Minister's box saying, no, it's got to be Michael Grade. She then gets a call, she says, and as I say, everything about the rest of this story has not been denied, saying that she should know that the advice note was tampered with in the course of the night. To say that that Gilbert should get the job. She rang Johnson and said, "Look, this thing has happened." And Johnson then says, "Okay, well, I'll go with your choice. It's going to be great.
I'll make sure it's great." I mean, it is, as you tell it, extraordinary, but it's hard to pinpoint precisely what the most extraordinary bit is. Whether it is the apparent lobbying, the apparent finagling, the interference with the ministerial box, or the complete failure of the BBC to respond satisfactorily to your repeated and very polite requests.
Well, all those are worrying. I mean, the attempt to get the right person, in inverted commas, into the Ofcom is worrying.
They regulate us as well, of course, Alan. It wouldn't just be the BBC. It would be me.
Yeah.
Well.
I mean, it destroys. I mean, I'm afraid Johnson, by trying, originally, you remember, tried to get Paul Dacre to chair Ofcom.
Yes.
And Charles Moore to chair the BBC. So this was the government trying to break down all the barriers between independence of the media and the regulator. So all that's worrying. But I'm also sad that the BBC, which I admire and support, doesn't feel in any way willing to verify the story. I mean, the story is clearly true, or the bits of it involving Robbie Gibb are clearly true. And my sadness is this, that in 2023, we rely on journalists to verify facts. So that means you ring up and say, look, Nadine Dorris has said this story. Is it true? And BBC journalists do that, I imagine, hundreds of times a day, if not thousands of times a day. And yet the BBC as an organisation, asked a simple question, is this true or not, has repeatedly refused to comment. And I think that's just really bad behaviour by the BBC. And if the BBC starts doing that, then why should any organisation ever help any journalist ever verify facts? It's just really bad.
Do you care to speculate at all on why they would do this? I mean, Gibb is quite well known for throwing his right weight around at the BBC, lecturing journalists on what impartiality is and should involve, despite, as you've reminded us, having come box fresh from Theresa May's operation at Downing Street, something that Lewis Goodall, my colleague here now at LBC, has spoken of in the past, saying that he found it a little rich that he was getting lectures on impartiality from a bloke who got a peerage off a Tory Prime Minister. So are people scared of Gibb? Would you care to speculate?
Well, I think he's a very influential figure now, because we have a Conservative government. The Conservative government is putting a lot of pressure on the BBC, claiming that they're biased. And so a scandal involving the one sort of identifiable, self-identifying Tory on the governing body would be embarrassing. So I think that the media strategy is we just won't say anything about this. And I know there are journalists who have tried to pursue this story and have hit the black brick wall that I've done, which is why you haven't read anything about it. And I just think some of us should keep going. I've been using Twitter to approach various BBC programs to see if they will have me on, because the BBC would then have to, you would think, put somebody on the show to answer the allegations. And imagine if Nick Robinson or someone asked a BBC spokesman, is this true? They couldn't flannel.
They're normally quite good at marking their own homework, even, in some famous cases, to their own detriment, aren't they? So it is a departure from normality.
It is, and, I think sometimes the BBC goes too far in flagellating themselves. So there's something curious about this story which doesn't add up, and I can't quite understand why, but it's something to do with the personality of Gibb and maybe the timing of a new BBC chair about to come in, who is reported to be an ally of Gibb.
Well, we shall keep an eye on your work and happily invite you back to bring us up to date with any developments, Alan Rusbridger.
Thank you.
Thank you. 12:41 is the time. Curiouser and Curiouser. And if you follow Alan, and indeed his Media Confidential podcast that he does with the former FT editor, Lionel Barber, is highly recommended by me as well, then keep an eye on that story, because it's something I write about in my new book. They're constantly claiming the BBC is biased against them, while the capture of it is almost complete, up to and including people on the board allegedly trying to influence the appointment of the supposedly independent chair of Ofcom. It's 12:42. Back to that. This is a bit of a gear change, isn't it? But let's just say this is not the kind of journalism Lord Reith had in mind when he formed the BBC, but I consider that to be a mistake on his part rather than an embarrassment on ours. Back to the question of the Christmas injury/mishap that happened as a consequence of your own very stupid, or indeed, as it's turned out, your loved ones' very stupid behaviour. Andrew's in Crowthorne. Andrew, what would you like to say?
Yeah, hi, James.
Hello.
Love the show.
What have you got?
Hi.
Hi.
So it was actually my father. We were at their house on Christmas morning. We'd just given them the news that my wife was due with a first child.
Oh, lovely.
So they were overly happy and had maybe a few too many glasses of champagne. The log in the lounge was smoking, so the elderly people were complaining about the smoke. Then my father went in there to remove the log, decided to pick it up with the tongs, went to throw it outside, but realised that the patio doors were locked and he couldn't throw it outside, and he just dropped it onto the sofa, onto the floor, and a small fire started, and then he went to try and pick it up with his hand and burnt himself.
No.
But thankfully, only minor burn.
So he's walking around, he's dancing around the sitting room momentarily with a burning log in his hands.
Exactly.
I love that. And the patio, and then they hit the patio door. And but no one hurt. No trips to A&E. No calls upon the National Health Service. I like that, Andrew. Thank you. Stay away from burning logs. Quite a lot to avoid this Christmas. Segways, logs, burning logs. I know what happened there. I've done that myself as well, because only a tiny bit of it appears to be on fire. So you think, I'll grab that end of it and I'll be absolutely fine. But as you move it, the air causes it to ignite still further, and it's like you've got a flaming torch in your hand. Stay away from cardboard boxes. Don't do your own Christmas tree soaring jobs while balancing. Jim's in Bovey Tracy. Jim, what have you got?
I got a shaggy dog story for you, James.
Carry on.
Christmas morning, and all the family always come to us, so they come over and we're all sat around ready to open presents, and my wife decided it'd be a good idea to light some scented candles.
That's nice. I like a scented candle.
Yeah, it was very nice. And we were sat there, and then my mother-in-law said, "Oh, what's the matter with the dog?"
The dog?
And we looked over the dog, and the dog was sort of sat there with her head going round and round in circles. So I called the dog over to me, and she was walking like a drunk person.
Right.
And then she collapsed and passed out.
Really?
And we were absolutely horrified. So my wife gets on the phone to the vets.
Yeah. On Christmas Day?
On Christmas Day.
Oh, crikey.
And we were transferred to an emergency vet who said, bring the dog in straight away. So my wife and daughter grabbed the dog, jumped in the car, and drove to Exeter, which is where the emergency vet was, which is about 20 miles away.
Good grief.
We're gone for several hours. We were phoning them. They wouldn't answer their phones. Then they came back and said, the dog's, apparently it's a reaction to the candles. And they kept the dog in for observations, and they'd given the dog some drugs and things like that. So all day my wife couldn't have a drink because she had to go back and get the dog.
Yeah, that was big of you, Jim.
Well, I'd already had a drink, James. Come on.
Well played.
Christmas dinner was very late.
Yeah, clearly.
The vet phoned and said, your dog's fine, come and get it. So we went and got the dog and picked up a bill as well for over £400.
And the rest. Yeah, Chris, I mean, vets, there's never met... I mean, so Christmas was up the spout, really. Everything was thrown into disarray. Your wife couldn't relax. You were all worried about the dog. And is that a known thing, scented cat? Because they can be toxic to dogs. Had the vet come across it before?
Yes, yeah. Funny enough, because the dog's a cockapoo, so she has to be clipped quite regularly.
Yes.
And the poodle parlour we take her to have scented candles in there. And I said, oh, my God, you can't have those.
Right.
And told the lady the story. And she said, oh, no, these are special ones from our supplier. They're dog safe.
Yeah, OK. So it's a known thing then?
Yeah.
I didn't know
and
it.
it's because dogs' nose is so sensitive to scents. They've got so many more scent receptors in their nose.
Yeah, there's paraffin in there, all sorts of things, isn't there?
Yeah, and it totally overcomes the dog's nasal system. So.
Well, I don't know that counts. Really. I think those rules I made at the beginning, I was being so strict about it, Jim. They were a waste of everybody's time because we've had things that didn't involve injuries, and now we've got a kind of doped up dog. It's nobody's fault. It was no one did anything stupid. Your wife lighting a nice scented candle on Christmas morning, but anyway, there's a lesson there for dog owners.
There is a lesson for dog owners, yeah.
And if you don't learn it...
And it's a good story as well.
It is a great story, and if you don't learn the lesson, it could cost you in excess of £400. 12:47 is the time.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
10-1 is the time. Of all the stuff we've done on the show today, I can't believe it's this that I'm going to apologise for. But I think I may have to stop laughing at Steve McLaren. Lee has been in touch to say he was actually advised by his media team that is the way that you should speak to Dutch journalists in English. You should sort of change the moderation of your language and the modulation is the word I'm looking for. And actually lots of people do it as well. You've pointed out to me that I kind of do it sometimes with callers, especially Irish callers, when I kind of find myself copying some of their mannerisms, verbal mannerisms, vocal mannerisms as well. So I don't know that we will have as much fun with the Steve McLaren story in the future as we have done in the past. Speaking of the past, I mentioned at the top of the show that our great friend Theo Usherwood had tweeted something about what the money currently being spent on Rwanda could also have been spent on. He came up with 8,800 police officers, 8,300 nurses, or 7,400 classroom teachers. LBC's crack team of operatives and indeed mathematicians have been looking at some other, or at least one major other way in which this money could have been spent. And Helen Hodinott is here to tell us more.
So, James, LBC's analysis of this £290 million figure imagines what could be achieved if more than £250 million was spent on clearing the asylum system backlog.
What a good idea!
Rather than on attempts to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda. We found that money would be enough to hire over 3,000 additional asylum caseworkers on a 3-year contract, the same time period covered by the UK's current financial commitments to Rwanda. And based on the Home Office's own figures, each of these workers could have cleared an average of 44 asylum cases per year. In total, this equates to just under 400,000 asylum claims over that contract. Now, responding to this, former Shadow Home Secretary Diane Abbott told LBC the Rwandan government must be laughing all the way to the bank, and the scheme is not just cruel and unworkable, but also increasingly ridiculous. This morning, the brand new Minister for Legal Migration has been out defending the costs of the programme. Tom Pursglove told LBC the money will be justified.
We've been very clear, and the Prime Minister is absolutely determined that we need to see through the promises that we made in relation to delivering on this economic and development partnership with Rwanda that, of course, has that very important migration component to it.
Well, right now, the backlog of asylum claims...
I know this.
You know this?
Yeah, go and ask me.
How big is the backlog of asylum claims?
175,000, Helen.
That's correct. I believe I just confirmed that to you before going on air.
Right, she's not coming back.
So using today's workings by LBC, spending the £290 million on the backlog would clear it more than 2 times
More than twice.
over.
It's just magnificent, isn't it?
Yeah, and it equates to tens of thousands of asylum seekers waiting painstakingly for a decision on their claims, unable to work, living in temporary accommodation, their lives stuck in limbo. And paying for that system costs the taxpayer around £3 billion each year.
What the Home Office said?
The Home Office, we've been in touch with them. They are working on a response to our figures.
Can't wait. Well done. Helen Hoddinott there with news of just how many asylum applications could have been processed with the money that's currently being spent on sending. Just remind me, Helen, how many people have been sent to Rwanda so far?
That is still 0.
Still 0. Any chance of it increasing in the immediate future, like by close of play today or this time next week?
Well, anything could happen.
Yes, you're playing that card. And that is yet more evidence on top of the teachers and the doctors and whoever else. You just pick an area in which you think that public money could be spent effectively and importantly, and compare it to the £290 million that has or is set to make its way to Kigali. Helen Hoddinott, thank you very much indeed. 12:55 is the time. I'm going to play... Well, can we squeeze in? What should we do? Karen, I'll do the clip first and see how much time we've got left afterwards. I've never done it... Well, I've done one full disclosure that I wasn't very pleased with, but I'm never going to tell you who it was. Not even in private, however much you pay me or beg me. So I know I always tell you that full disclosure has been brilliant. But this week, to me, was very, very special. I mean, I put it up there, all right, with best interviews I've ever been involved in. He's a fascinating man for whom I've got absolutely unbounded respect. Well, at least I thought it was unbounded, because I came out of the interview with even more respect and admiration for him than I went in. I'm talking, of course, about the TV presenter, conservationist, campaigner, legend, Chris Packham.
I do remember, my father opening an envelope which contains... I took some of my O-levels a year early, and I remember the envelope coming in, and he came up the stairs with it, and you would write your exam number on it, so it was obvious what it was, a self-addressed envelope. And he opened it, and he looked at it, and then he sort of looked at me and put it on and just walked out the door. And I thought, oh, my God, I must have failed something. And I didn't. It was just that I got a couple of C's, So, and I'd done them a year early, and I didn't really care about them, No, my parents pushed us really, really hard, and they had my father had a tremendous work ethic, which I and my sister inherited. And we were never watching TV, hardly at all. If he thought that we'd been watching TV on a Saturday morning, he wouldn't have been very impressed. It was always something we had to be doing.
But there's no resentment here. I mean,
none at all.
Because you were quite happy being completely focused on whatever the latest project was.
Yeah, no, very much so. Yeah, no, my father and I remained great friends to the end of his life. My mother and I had a slightly more troubled relationship. But, my dad and I were always great mates, and we shared our interests. And
was he proud of you?
He never said so.
Never?
No. But I don't know. I mean, some of the things that I did. My father was a strange man. He had a great respect for authority. The police were the police. And he was always embarrassed when they were around the house because I'd committed some misdemeanour or other.
We're not going to let you gloss over that either, but carry on from there.
But at the same time, he would say to me, "You've always got to question authority." So he had these sort of two sides. So when I was, sort of campaigning, my dad would sort of think that he would secretly think that was good, Yes. And when I was sort of making trouble in order to raise questions, to authority about, poor practice or illegalities, whatever it happened to be, I think my dad might have been proud of that. I think he might have been proud about the fact that, I wasn't sitting back, I was sticking my head above the parapet, basically.
He's such a lovely man, such an incredible story, and of course still leading such an important life. Chris Packham, this week's guest on Full Disclosure. I've got a call here that says, well, I've got to take it, and it's in Liverpool, so Sheila Fogarty will forgive me. Karen, what's the story?
Oh, hello, Brian.
Yes.
Well, you've made Sheila's
many,
day.
Many years ago.
Yes, carry
Boxing
on.
Day.
Yes.
A multi-generational meal of people round the table.
Go on.
My father, who's in his 80s now, but was probably in his 40s, 50s then,
Yes.
was a bit of a joker. He thought it was a really good idea to replicate something he'd seen on the Generation Game the night before, or the week before. He went out the room, came in with his mouth full of, we now know, methylated spirit, and then proceeded to be a human flamethrower across the table.
He did like fire eating, breathing fire.
Yes.
What happened?
It was spectacular.
I bet.
It did shoot right across the table. It set fire to the serviettes. We were
That's
all
a great
panicking.
line. That's straight out of Alan Bennett.
The table.
Yes.
He singed my Auntie Nora's eyebrows. And he also singed my uncle's fringe. He also had to be taken, obviously, to be checked out at hospital.
Had he had a drink?
Oh, yeah. But the situation there is he wasn't badly injured. He just had blistering around his mouth for the next 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, and he didn't. That was the end of his fire-breathing career, I think.
Yes, it was.
What an amazing way to end the show, Karen.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
It does go down in history.
Well, it certainly does. Just before we go, it's James, by the way.
I know, James. I'm so sorry. And I love your show. I got nervous.
I know you did. I'm teasing. You're very kind. Well, there's another lesson for us there. Let's add that. Let's add fire breathing to the list of things to stay away from this Christmas. You're right there,
I've never been more relieved to hear the word eyebrows. I was wondering if Nickers was coming, but it didn't.
If you missed any of today's show, it's worth listening back on Catch Up on Global Player, where you can pause and rewind live radio. You can listen back to the whole show podcast on Global Player, where you can also pause and rewind. All LBC shows there, as well as the podcasts. You're always in control of Global Player, so download it for free from your app store or head to globalplayer.com. Coming up at 4 on LBC, it's Tom Swarbrick, but now it's time. She's announced her arrival. It's time for Sheila Fogarty.
Honestly, I was just thinking this morning about corpsing on air and how funny it is when it happens, and it just has. Thanks for that, James.
James O'Brien on LBC.